Good morning, and sometimes it's time to just take note of the fact that one is living in possibly the world's most beautiful place. Inhale deeply as the dawn breaks on the eastern horizon and take a load off, as they say in sort of modern parlance, I think. You are most welcome on our morning safari with Bryan on camera. Hello, Bryan.
Hello, James.
Very nice to have you with me again. And me, James Hendry, and I am just relaxing here on the dashboard as the dawn breaks. The sun is threatening to peep up over the eastern horizon. It is an absolutely stunningly magnificent morning here on the northeast corner of South Africa. You are on a live safari, which means we'd like to hear from you over the course of the next 3 hours. I've told you my name already. You can talk to us on Twitter, #SafariLIVE, or questions@wildearth.tv if you want to talk to us on the email. Also out today will be Stefan the Mystic Winterboer, and he'll be out on foot with Wium Dorenbrak, who will be carrying a very large pack, roughly the same size as his good self. In the final control, Rebecca is talking to me in my ear, and Luis is tapping away at the keys and receiving your questions via Twitter and email. So that's generally the lay of the land this morning. Our plan is to head right into that rising sun, or that reddening horizon, towards Cheetah Plains, terra incognito to the east, and see if we can't find Inkanyeni, the leopardess that dear Samwise Gamgee managed to find on the far eastern boundary where the Kudu National Park joins the Sabi Sands yesterday evening. What a wonderful experience that was for him and for all of you. Right, I shall now attempt to adopt some form of professional stance, and we'll go into the wilderness and see what we can find. The last few days, I've also tangled myself up, of course, in wires. The last few days have been pretty sort of dull in the mornings. There have been lots of cloud about. I don't mean in terms of sightings. And today is very different. Today there isn't a cloud in the sky, which means it is a little bit chilly. It's 15 degrees Celsius, 69 degrees Fahrenheit. I've got a little blankie for my leggies. You see that, Bryan?
I do.
This is my blankie.
I'm sad I don't have
Yeah, I know. But you didn't want one, Bryan, because you said everybody sits on the other blankets and that makes them distasteful. Quite with reason. All righty then. Here we go. The first thing we'll do is stop next to these impalas, because one should stop for impalas at least once a day, for they are very magnificent and oft overlooked. You don't need the lights on anymore. And just listen, what's quite nice about this time of the day is that you can really hear the kind of start of the dawn chorus. And the major bird that you can hear at the moment, apart from the doves, which are ubiquitous, is the grey-headed sparrow, going choop choop, choop choop, choop choop. I'm just watching some impala behind us running past. Go ahead. Good morning. Sorry, I'm just on the radio, everybody. This is fantastic news. Fantastic, fantastic news. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. We'll pick it up from you later. We don't need it this morning. Thanks so much, Chris. We've lost a we lost a fuel cap the other day. No updates, Chris. Now that oxpecker's up very early. Oh, this is just wonderful, isn't it? So peaceful. And I'm sure these impala are extremely happy to have made it through the night, because they are, of course, on the menu for just about every single predator out here. You can see with that new camera of ours, the way the hair is standing up slightly. They trap air underneath the hair and makes them a bit warmer. A bit like that bird is fluffing his feathers out. In fact, exactly like that. She's a really pretty impala, not that any of them are particularly distasteful to look at. You hear how it's starting to get slightly louder. More and more doves are waking up. Lots of little sparrows calling from everywhere where there's a tree hole that they can nest in. It is too delightful. I'm required every so often to excuse myself and speak upon this thing. If it is relevant to what we're going to see, then I'll just flick a little switch here, and then you can hear what whoever it is has to say. It was Chris who's driving out of Wium just down here. That's part of Juma, and he managed to find the fuel cap that I think I drove off with yesterday while it was on the seat, and it fell off onto the road while we were chasing the wild dogs yesterday morning. Let us continue and see what we can see. X-Ranger, you say you hope I didn't roll over onto Sam's elephant on the dashboard here. Everybody, Sam put an elephant on the dashboard, and it's a sort of good luck charm. It seems to have disappeared. Not really, it's a different car. It's still on Wendy, everybody. This is Rusty, and we're on Rusty so that we can go off towards Cheetah Plains. While I answer Nate's question, you can hear a grey-headed sparrow, and this is one of the first calls of the morning. He's in this deep thicket somewhere. You can't see him, can you, Bryan? He calls every morning, and I've never seen him. Nate, you want to know how fast those antelope can run. Nate, they can probably run at about 45 miles an hour, which is pretty quick. About 60 kilometers per hour. He's in there somewhere. Alrighty, let's carry on. Stef will be out on foot fairly soon because it's a lovely light day already, and that will be wonderful to discover the little things that he manages to find. He has an absolutely astounding ability to spot tiny little things in the bush, and it'll be just the best in this kind of morning light. So like I say, our plan is to go towards Cheetah Plains. I suppose what we'll do first is just do a little foray down the southern end of Juma and see if Karula hasn't finished her impala and come back. I think today or maybe tomorrow she'll come back, or certainly finish her kill. She may then go deeper south, of course, but I hope that she comes further north. She's right on the southern end of her territory where she is now, and that is just to the south of us on a little reserve called Little Gowrie. And we can't drive there, of course, unfortunately. But it is the territory of her daughter Tundi, and I'm hoping that Tundi will tell her mum that, the good times are over and that she needs to come back here with her two offspring. Chilly now, going down into the dips, and that's a big change, of course, in the seasons. When we head in summertime, it doesn't seem to make much difference. The ridge crests and the dips like this seem to be exactly the same temperature. Whereas at this time of year, you can hear and you can feel an incredible thermocline. So it's pretty warm up top, probably about, maybe 15 or 16 or 17 degrees Celsius. And now as we go down here, I think it's probably dropped about 4 degrees, maybe 3 or 4 degrees. Which is not unpleasant at all. I just think it's really interesting. Remember that it doesn't ever get that cold here. The coldest it gets is about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. No, a little bit colder than that. Probably about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, about 4 degrees Celsius. That was the coldest we had last year. I remember sitting on Treehouse Dam wall, rubbing my hands together. In fact, I think somebody had very kindly given me some gloves. I was wearing those gloves. And of course, for most of you in the northern hemisphere, the thought of 4 degrees making you cold is laughable. But out here, we're just not very brave with the cold. Oh, very fresh smells. A little bit of dew coming off the grass as the morning starts to break. There's just a little bit more heat in the air than there was half an hour ago. So the aromatic oils that live in many of the plants out here will start to lift a little bit off the surface of the leaves, and that touches the air with a sort of spicy or herby scent as we drive along through the dew. With any luck, fairly soon we will see the sun coming up. But it's quite chilly on the ears, is it not, Bryan? Bryan's putting on gloves, everyone. He does obviously need his fingers to be functioning, otherwise your picture will go deeply out of focus and you'll be looking at everything from a great distance. We'll go to the next junction and then have a listen to what else the Dawn Chorus has to offer us. And then we'll head down towards the Umlulwati drainage line where Karula has had her kill. For those of you who don't know, perhaps new viewers, Karula, a 12-year-old female leopard who's provided the bulk of our viewing, or provides much of the female leopard viewing that we have. And she's got 2 little cubs who turn 3 months old in, it'll be on the 2nd of May. Maybe we should head down this road. Into the rising sun. There's some woodpeckers up here. Let me go back a bit. Can you see them? Should I stop? Ooh, look at that. That's an incredible shot. Not woodpeckers. Kingfishers. Very nice. Brown-hooded kingfishers, everyone. They don't often sit like this. They normally sit in the fairly deep bush. That's a brown-hooded kingfisher, the most common kingfisher of the winter. In the summer, of course, we're inundated with the woodland kingfisher. Chipper! That's a good start. And just over to the right-hand side, the drongos. Let's just roll down this road. There they are, silhouetted against the rising light. Ooh. A few of them flying around there. Of course, the smaller the creature is, the more impossible it is to track with the camera, and the more seasick you will get as the attempt to track it is made. There they go, diving down, hawking the new insects of the morning. Then, Bryan, did you see that thing fly? No, let me go forward. I just caught it out of the corner of my eye. I think it's an oriole in the left-hand side of this bush, basically directly over the aerial now. Can you see what I mean? So, yeah, a little bit left. Left, that's left again. Keep going, left, 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 left. A bit more. Keep going. He's down there. Yeah, that's exactly where he was there. I think he's moved. You can see that branch waving there. He's gone. There was an oriole there, everybody. They just very seldom sit still for us. Oh, and there's an arrow-marked babbler. That's brilliant. There's a whole flock of them in there. Fantastic. Lots of different calls going. There's some bulbuls calling. There's a scimitar that's just landed in the knobthorn tree above us. And that will start calling soon. That's him there. Brilliant, Bryan. it'll be gleaning leaves, or that might be a woodpecker actually in there, or that, what is that? It's a blackbird, it's not a woodpecker. I think it is the scimitar-bull. There's a whole bird party going on here. It's wonderful. No doubt there's some starlings there. And way in the background I can hear a bearded woodpecker going tap, 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 tap. I'm always amazed at how they're able to hop around in a tree like that. You know, the thorns are so sharp and nasty in that tree that you couldn't rub your hands over the leaves without sort of tearing the flesh off your hand. But these birds just hop around as if there's nothing in there, jumping sort of their own body height regularly. I think it's most impressive. Anyway, they're all rather silhouetted against the lightening eastern sky. So let's move on and see if we can't find some others that are being front-lit so you can see their colours. Rebecca, are you still there? Just checking that she hasn't fallen asleep, everyone. Let's see. She hasn't fallen asleep. That's a relief. Now, you can see the sky changing colour every minute. It turns a new shade of blazing red. Let's just get down through into this area. Right, while we head down towards where Karula was in the Imlerwati drainage line, Stefan Winterboer is on foot and ready to receive you.
Well, good morning, and have a look at that. There's always just something magical about a sunrise and watching a sunrise. I've always found it, and I mean, I'm being in the industry that we're in, I've seen hundreds of sunrises, if not thousands of sunrises. And that always gives you this most unbelievable sense of expectation for me. The fact that it builds up in color until what I like to describe as being almost an impossible yellow. And that's fast approaching at the moment. Good morning, I am Stefan Winterboer, and you are with myself and Wium on the Bushwalk this morning. And we are standing on top of quarantine clearings only because we wanted to watch this most beautiful of sunrises. There's a little bit of cloud that we can just see coming up. It's just being outlined at least by the sun, and the sun should crack that horizon now. As you can see, that impossible yellow is starting, and it'll build to a gold color. I'm busy looking at the screen just to see what Wium is actually busy filming over here, and you can see that nimbus coming up. There we go. There it comes. Yes, and Meg's in California has echoed what I feel. We can't wait to find what we're going to see today. Look at that sun coming up there. The sun, of course, has already risen above the horizon. The light that we're seeing coming through the screen at you now is already 8 minutes old. That's how far away the sun is from us. The sun is well above the horizon. And of course, we are racing on planet Earth towards that sun of ours at this latitude, probably around about 1,400 kilometers an hour. So just under 1,000 miles an hour is the speed that we are racing towards the sun, causing it to rise up above the horizon like that. Sun, of course, our closest star, and what makes all life possible here. One of the aspects, one of the foundations that makes all life possible here. Now this morning, myself and Wium have decided that we are going to walk a point to point. We're not going to be doing a circular route, which is usually what we do. We are going to be walking from where we are now and seeing how far north and west we can get. So aiming directly for Cheetah Plains from where we are now, and we're going to make a beeline for as far as what we can get. I definitely know we're going to get sidetracked by a lot of different things. A, because that's just how things happen on a bushwalk, and B, is there's so much to see between here and there. We've got the drainage line, a massive drainage line to cross, and we have got a couple of hills. But basically, let me show you the route we're going to pick, see if we can get it for you through those trees there, Wium. You can see we're going to be following a series of valleys. There we go. And we're aiming for the horizon. That is just to give you an idea of how far we do move on these bushwalks. But standing here talking about it's not going to show you anything new, and it's definitely not going to get us any closer to that horizon. So come along, let's carry on going. Now, quarantine clearings, of course, is absolutely, well, what we're going to do is, I'm sure it's going to be boring to watch us walking and to stare at my back, so we're going to send you through to James, who I'm sure has got something very interesting or informative to know, entertaining to tell you, and we'll catch up with you when we're on the other side of these clearings.
Hello everybody, a little bit of confusion there. Just wanted to quickly show you the vacated Wahlberg's eagle's nest, and this is where the Wahlberg's eagle couple, the chocolate brown one and the pale white one, live. Sorry, we've got a small problem here with the camera. Let me move back a bit. Does that help at all? There we go. No? Kind of. We can't move the camera. There we go, Brian. There we go. So that's the Wahlberg's eagle's nest. The Wahlberg eagles, of course, have gone up into sub-Saharan tropical Africa for the course of the winter. And they are having spring there now. And the place we're sitting in here is probably the place that is lowest down on Djuma, and therefore the coldest. And I think it's at least 4 degrees colder than it was up on quarantine. I was just saying to Brian that I too might have to get some gloves to cover my little handies for the course of the winter time. We all, of course, in South Africa forget that we have a winter. As soon as August hits, we assume that it's always hot here. We have what I call winter amnesia. We should get a view of the golden orb rising out of the east from twin dams, where then Karula will be grooming her children on the dam wall. I know that's highly unlikely, but it's possible. Here we are at the dam. We're just going past an impala, which was supposed to sit still for us, but he's run away. Jared, you want to know what Inkanyeni means and how old she is. So Inkanyeni, everybody, is the female leopard that Sam found yesterday on Cheetah Plains, and she's quite famous in this region. I actually don't know how old she is, so I'm going to ask one of our leopard experts to send it through her age. I think she's about 8, if I'm not mistaken. I may well be mistaken. But Inkanyeni means, Gukanya means to light up. So Inkanyeni basically means light. It's quite a nice word, really. And she comes from a long line, I think, of golden leopards that stretch back to romantically named Campbell Koppie's female of Mala Mala. And there have been a number of them around here. She was related, if I'm not mistaken, to Kwatile, who was recently deceased, possibly at the fangs of a snake, off to the west of where we are now. And they're very different colors from Karula's line, which tend to be a sort of more pale lemon yellow. And it's a really interesting sort of color difference that they have. Thank you, Jared, for that. Now, I'm not sure of her age. She's got that typical 4-4, or not typical, but she's got a 4-4 spot pattern, and so that's makes her pretty recognizable. And those are the spots just above the whisker line. Oh, she's 11 actually. Thank you, Final Control. Right, now we're on the main southern boundary, so we're going to check for tracks of the leopardess Karula coming back this way with her little ones. But she did kill a fully grown male impala just inside here the other day, and I suspect that that's going to last her probably 3 days. She's been in here 2 days now, and I think that that kill will probably last her about 3 days. So she'll be in and around this area, inside Little Gari, which is to the right-hand side of your screen, probably for another day or so. We'll just stop down here. I'm going to go up a little bit so that Brian's got the maximum spread on the bottom of the drainage line there. Now, Brian, basically, I think if you just follow the line of the drainage, basically where that corner is, everybody, is where the leopardess was, up in a tree to the right-hand side. But I thought maybe we'd be lucky enough to see her lurking on the sand there. She's literally just round the corner, or she was yesterday and the day before. It would be amazing if we could view her at this distance. But she's not there at the moment. I'm sure she's still enjoying her meal. She might pop across a bit later. In the meantime, let us head across to Cheetah Plains and see if we can find Nkanyeni of the light. Nate, again, thank you for your question. How long will those little cubs stay with their mother? Well, at the moment, I think there's one male and one female. Stef thinks it might be 2 males. There's definitely at least 1 male. And there are slightly different sizes. So my guess is 1 male, 1 female. I think Brent agrees with me, but we're not 100% sure at this stage. And that makes a huge difference as to how long they will stay with their mothers. The males, like a human mother, like humans, tend to become independent a little bit later than the females. They like to hang around with their mothers until they're about 18 months to 2 years old. And then they go off on their own. And the females can be independent from as early as 9 months, much more likely to be around a year to 14 months. But they have certainly been recorded in this area as going independent as early as 8 months. But I think that's exceptional. And Chris Rogue is also looking forward to seeing Quarantine at Cheetah Plains. Quarantine, of course, is now, what is he? He's 3 years in December. So he's January, February, March, April. 3 years and 4 months old. And he has been spending a lot of time around 3 in a row pan on Cheetah Plains. So we're very lucky we'll find him lurking there. Maybe we'll have 2 leopards on Cheetah Plains, some cheetah and some ostrich. And maybe the Birmingham boys. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah,
do you like that?
It's a good menu.
Yes, it's a good menu. All right, we're going to drop a gear and move a bit quicker so that we can get to Cheetah Plains before you lose too much signal. Let's head across to Stef and see what he's found.
Son, we were alerted to some animals by the sound of those oxpeck. And also heard of Kudu. They still don't know we're here. I think just one of the Kudu saw us. Come a little bit. So obviously, alarm calls from things like oxpeckers you have to take very seriously. Kudu are moving off through the bush. Can actually just see. Now this time of the year, you sometimes not have male kudu that are with these female kudu. I just see a young male. We had actually thought that it was some buffalo, but it ended up being some kudu. It's not bad, it's quite nice to see kudu. Obviously they saw or heard us coming down the road. We must have sounded like a bunch of elephants to them with their big trumpet-shaped ears, and didn't allow us to get too close before you joined us, but nevertheless, we got to see them, and at least we got to find out what those oxpeckers were making their noise at. Like I said, you've got to take things like that quite seriously when you're out here. You want to cultivate an inquisitive mind as to the alarm calls of animals or the distress calls of animals. Have a look here, Wium. We have some butterflies that are roosting. Now, butterfly wings, apart from being there for display and for more visual keys and to butterflies' life, they frighten off each other with them, they scare predators with them. They also act as solar panels, and they will then orientate themselves to the sun early in the morning. The sun's rays will heat up the fluid in the wings. That fluid will go into the bodies of the insects and allow butterflies then to have a much better thermoregulation, and therefore their ability to react to temperature changes. Most insects are very sensitive to temperature changes. Butterflies are no exception, but one of the ways that they deal with this is through having a massive wing surface area. And that's what you're busy having a look at the moment. Isn't that beautiful? Now, admittedly, Brent and James are much better at identifying butterflies than what I am. What happens out here is that seasonally you get good at doing different things. So seasonally you get good at doing birds or butterflies or moths or insects or plants or flowers, whatever's good that season. And then during winter, when all of these insects disappear, you lose that knowledge. And the last time I did any meaningful study into butterflies was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and hence the knowledge sloughs out of my brain like water off the proverbial duck's back. I'm not known for having the world's best memory. But anyway, those butterflies, as you can see, not flitting around. The height of the butterfly activity around here seems to be between about 11 and 1 o'clock. And then when all other insects are getting too hot, well, not all other insects, when most other insects are confined to the shade, butterflies have an almost exclusive access to the flowers that they go and pollinate. And that's one of the reasons, not all the reasons, why butterflies have these massive, beautiful, large wings. I'm sure Sam will tell you in months to come, there's a science in the world called biomimicry. And the scales on the wings of the butterfly are like little mirrors. They are refractive, and they're also shaped the most unbelievable natural shapes, all faceted. And what that helps the butterfly do is to reflect and refract sunlight around the wing quite effectively, making use of that surface area. But what it also does is it allows us to study the shapes of those facets. And I know that in the cosmetics industry, the shape of the butterfly's wing scales is now used in the powder that ladies put on their faces. I'm not too sure I think it's called blush, the colored powder you put on to make it a bit more shiny and a bit more sparkly. So I'm good at Rebecca going blush, eyeshadow, and all that in my ear. As you can see, it's not something that I know too much about. I suppose I could do with a bit of forehead powder to get rid of the glare, though, really. All right, let's carry on going. And Jamie one has picked up on a fact that I said that the butterfly was roosting, and yes, as far as I understand, that's the correct term when you see that butterflies are sitting down. Usually it's when butterflies are sitting down on a flower, but in this particular case I used it because that butterfly was sitting on that flower's stem after a night in the cold. So roosting, yeah, it's not something that's more like a chicken, but anything can roost, I suppose. Ah. And Frank has asked a nice question because of the fact that butterflies come from caterpillars. As we might know, butterflies come from caterpillars. Caterpillars eat plants, and sometimes, and in a lot of cases, the toxic elements in a plant are absorbed by the caterpillar and then transferred into chemical warfare weapons in butterflies. A lot of butterflies are actually quite toxic or acrid tasting. Now, the flash coloration of the butterfly's wing, those very bold colors on a butterfly's wing, are there to say to predators, potential predators, I am not good to eat, I don't taste well. In the case of the African monarch, or the monarch butterflies, as we all know, they feed on milkweeds, or their caterpillars feed on milkweeds, and can be very toxic. So most butterflies are not eaten by everything. You would expect them just to be eaten by all manner of things. But very few birds eat or are able to eat or distinguish between the toxic and the non-toxic butterflies. You do find butterflies fed on by a number of mongoose will eat butterflies, civets will eat butterflies, and then of course your insect predators, spiders will eat butterflies, and a bunch of beetles will eat butterflies. But generally they're not fed on by diurnal predators at all. You'd expect birds to just be plucking them out of the sky all the time, but that's not the case. And it's because of their caterpillars that feed on toxic plants and then transfer that toxin into the butterfly after metamorphosis has taken place. A nice question there, Frank. Kathy in Tennessee has noticed my flash coloration on my arm, although I must be honest, my shirt is becoming whiter and whiter the more I wash it. That armband, Kathy, is not to indicate a certain level of guarding that I have. The armband that I wear is for anti-poaching patrols. So the Sabi Sands has... Wium's just heard an alarm call. Alright, we've got Kudu or Nyala giving an alarm call just in front of us here. And let's just listen for a little bit more. There's just two barks, smaller bark. Now the reason why I'm taking my time to listen is that if it was a leopard or a lion, those barks would be much more frantic. Just two barks doesn't mean that there's no leopard there, to be honest with you. It just means that those particular animals are not being hunted by anything, which will make finding them a little bit more difficult. So I think let's go through here. Kathy, I will pick up the answer to your question in a bit. They're not too far away. Those barks are like 100 meters away from here. So let's go there, go see what's there before it moves on. Perhaps we're lucky we find some lion. All right. We are not too far from the camp, in actual fact. We're probably we're on Twin Dams Road, which is quite close to the camp. So for those of you who can listen to the dam cam, you probably heard those barks. Alright. I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. It is fairly open here. What I'm doing is I'm keeping my eye open underneath bushes for any sign of a cat. That bark that those Kudu or Nyala were giving, they give when they are alarmed, usually at cats. Okay, we've got the Nyala. So it was Nyala, not Kudu. We've got two males and a female. They've seen us. They don't look stressed at all. huge bull nyala, that in actual fact, the one at the end. Alright, so no leopard. It seems like they just got a fright. It could have been a jackal, it could have been a serval or a caracal. They will react to that. But doesn't look like anything on the predator, the big predator side. We're all going to stick around here and see if they can give us any more clues. This female just coming through to watch us now. So unfortunately nothing exciting. Blissfully unaware of us, we're standing here, Wium and I. For those antelope, they'd be looking directly into the sun, which is why they can't see us. And what we're going to do is we're just going to wait here, and they'll probably come walking straight past us at some point, and not too far away, which will give me some time to finish your question, Kathy. So this armband here allows an anti-poaching patrol to distinguish me from someone who shouldn't be walking around in the bush. It's just a visual cue. The bush here has anti-poaching patrols. We don't know where they are or where they're stationed. They could be anywhere, and it's for them hiding away and trying to find poachers, for them to see that because I'm carrying a rifle and because we've got backpacks on and we work in the bush on foot, but I'm not a rhino poacher. It's just one of those things. That I have to be registered with the Sabi Sands. They know my face, and yeah, one of those things. As to how much experience I've got 17 years of working in this area and working as a field guide. And most of that I've been based here in the Sabi Sands and the Kruger National Park in actual fact, with a couple of years, just 1 year spent in the Wahlberg, which is near the northeast of the country, close to Botswana, a very mountainous part of the country, and something that I enjoyed tremendously. All right. Right, so I think myself and Wium are going to snoop around here a little bit and see what caused those nyala to give the bark. I don't think it's anything, hopefully it's just something small, maybe a jackal. We're going to be taking it easy, and while we're doing that, James has just arrived at Cheetah Plains for you. See you just now.
Welcome to Cheetah Plains, everybody. As you can see, it is, well, pretty much exactly the same as Djuma is. We're not too far from Djuma, only about 4 kilometers as the crow flies. I'm driving into the rising sun, so if you see an elephant, I might well drive up its bottom by mistake, because the sun is very bright in my eyes. We are heading towards 3 in a row pan, trifecta water, and we'll see if we can't find quarantine there quickly for Chris Rogue and all his fans, and then we'll head down towards the clearings and off to the eastern boundary and see if we can't find tracks of Inkanieni, where Samwise left her yesterday evening. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to see her babies. That would be wonderful. Does anyone know how old they are? I'm not sure how old they are. I thought they were about 5 months. Maybe even 6 months. Try out there, Bryan. Very aggressive stick. They are indeed 5 months. I've never driven this road at Cheetah Plains. This one is called Old Djuma Dam Road. Sorry, Ravi, my ear is extremely itchy. I think your question is about disease and how it is that animals cope with new strains of disease out here. Is that correct, Rebecca? Rebecca! Ah, Ravi, okay, I got it now. Ravi, you're in New York. Obviously, you're always in New York, and you want to know about new strains of diseases. So animals have evolved to deal with diseases out here, and diseases, of course, are constantly evolving themselves. And how do animals, deal with the constantly evolving suite of disease? Well, sometimes they don't, and it's a good question because, yes, bacteria, viruses, all sorts of pathogens constantly evolving at a much greater rate than, say, impala or lions are, because, of course, their lifespan is so much shorter. And so the speciation, or the difference in species and the changes, will be that much faster for a bacteria or a virus. Now, how they cope with that is that they are constantly looking for they're constantly looking for mates with different resistance. It's one of the major selection points with mammals. When they select a mate, one of the biggest things they look for, and it's totally unconscious, and we do it even as humans, one of the biggest things they look for is a resistance to parasites. Now, you would be amazed at how many parasites and pathogens your body is currently fighting off as we speak. And because of that, there's this constant pressure to try and fight off disease. And when we seek out a mate, one of the things we select for, and it's something that you can actually sense in your nose when you smell somebody, and it's the same for animals out here, you select a mate that hopefully has a totally different suite of parasite resistance to your own. And in so doing, you produce an offspring that has both of your parasite resistance suites. So that's one of the ways that we cope with differing parasites. Of course, also our immune systems learn. They're a bit like an artificial intelligence as well, where our immune systems will learn something that is foreign. So it's not necessarily that they have to be, that your immune system has to know or understand. Here's a little southern black tit, sitting beautifully for us. Silly bird. Let's just stop and listen for a while I finish this discussion, because I think it's an interesting one. So Ravi, where was I? I've got completely lost my train of thought. Oh yes. So an immune system is like an artificial intelligence, where you're not kind of programmed in to be like an antivirus, for example, where you have to be programmed into a certain number of viruses, and if a new one comes along, unless the virus database is updated, then it's it won't your immune system won't defend you against that virus. Much rather, the immune system is programmed to get hold of anything that seems foreign. And so when new parasites and new bacteria which are recently evolved occur, so the body is still able to cope with them normally. But often, of course, we get things like what we call drug-resistant TB, and in South Africa, tuberculosis is still a major issue. And because of the amount of drugs that we've used to treat tuberculosis, the bacteria are constantly evolving in order to avoid the effects of the drugs, which means that we get constant new strains of tuberculosis, and it becomes more and more difficult to deal with those. As usual, from Ravi, a very good question. I hope one to which I've given a relatively decent answer. I think there are certainly elements of what I've said that occur out here. I've no doubt there are a whole lot more, because, as I say, diseases out here do evolve at an astonishingly fast rate compared with our own ability to change and adapt as a species. That's simply because our lifespan is much longer than that of a bacteria. Eileen says, go and find your spouse or significant other and tell them that you chose them for their resistance to parasites. I've said this before, everyone, but And some of you have said you know what I mean, and some of you have said I'm talking rubbish. But some people just smell right to you, and some people just smell wrong. That's not to say they smell bad, they just don't smell right. And people who smell right to you, if you read up about these things, often they smell right to you because their parasite load or their resistance is different. And so it seems like a good idea to your body to make offspring with them. I think let's stop there before I get myself into more trouble. There is a male impala rushing off towards the tower from which we are trying to broadcast this wonderful signal to you. Sorry, 1 second here. Desert Eagle, you've asked a question. Fortunately, it was drowned out by someone waffling on the Game Drive channel. Desert Eagle, I'm going to ask you a question again from Rebecca. Desert Eagle, you say you've heard there's a parasite that can turn a snail into a zombie. Desert Eagle, I have not heard of the parasite that is able to create the zombie snail. I'd love to know more about that. Actually, it sounds quite fascinating. Have you heard of that, Bryan?
I haven't.
The zombie snail attack of 2017 sounds absolutely terrifying, especially when you consider the size of a giant African land snail out here. You know, sort of almost half a foot across, some of them. I'd hate to find an army of zombie snails marching across the plains. Here we go. It's a parasitic worm called green-banded broodsack. But how that then creates a zombified snail, I'm not sure. It sounds fascinating. Thank you, Desert Eagle. I will find out. That's wonderful. I've just... Oh, I see. Okay, so apparently it affects the nervous system of the snail, so that it becomes almost suicidal, and allows, I think, birds to catch it or something like that. I'm struggling with the communications from the final control. But what it doesn't do is raise the snail from the dead and have it walking sort of in a zombified manner and attacking other snails or indeed other organisms and turning them too into zombies. I just had a sort of picture in my mind of this army of 10,000 snails marching across the Cheetah Plains very slowly, growling. What is that noise they make, Bryan? Exactly. An army of 10,000 giant land snails coming across the plains going, but very, very slowly indeed. Thank you, Desert Eagle. Now, Chelsea, you're in Utah and you ask a very salient question about other species and species that affect other species. And are there any species in the Sabi Sands whose numbers are negatively affecting others because there are too many of them? Chelsea, that's a very interesting one, and it's actually got quite a deep and long-winded answer, which I would attempt to give you while we drive through here, not looking at very much. The numbers of every species will affect the numbers of every other species inevitably, to a greater or lesser extent. If we take, for example, kudu and nyala, if there are very many kudu, it's going to reduce the amount of food that there is for the nyala to eat, and vice versa. If there are very many elephants, that's going to reduce the amount that just about every other herbivore has to eat, because elephants, of course, are a keystone species and they eat a huge amount of vegetation. So, absolutely, here's this extremely odd situation here. Bryan, you remember this?
I do.
there is a hose in the top of this tree, which is fairly inexplicable. Not really sure why there is water in the hose in the top of this tree. Anyway, you know, you see odd things all over the place, and I guess that's just one of them. So, Chelsea, to carry on with that discussion, there are no exotic species out here that are affecting negatively the presence of other species. All of these sort of mammal species here are native to the area, but through the provision of artificial water, which humans have done in this area probably for the last 30 or 40 years, it's created a situation where the population of impala has exploded. This tree is too precious for words. Is it not lovely, Bryan? It is, of course, the sjambok pod, or Cassia abbreviata, and I just want to quickly have a look at it. We will get on with our leopard searching very shortly. So, Chelsea, the impala, which are highly effective grazing competitors, yes, they have definitely affected the presence of other species, sable and roan and sesame. They have all been, their numbers have been reduced through the presence of so many impala. Great question. Let's have a look-see. Sometimes it's just a good idea to give a tree a bit of a hug. What I was hoping to find a pod here to show you why it's called the sjambok pod or Cassia abbreviata, but I don't see any. And it is, of course, growing on a termitaria, a termite mound, and the termite mound provides it with a great deal of nutrition. Bryan, my audio is still okay, is it?
Still 100%.
And, of course, one of the great joys of living out here is climbing trees. And to be brutally honest with you, the main reason I wanted to stop here was to climb into this tree. It is just so very nice. I can't see any leopards up here though, everyone, so I'll come back down and we can continue with our safari. Bryan, you will take the camera off me if I start to fall, won't you?
Of course.
Yes. That's very kind of you. That was particularly inelegant.
Good dismount. Good dismount.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. My legs, you can see everyone, have recovered from the exertions of the touch rugby a few days ago. A wonderful tree. One would expect to find things living in there. Fairies, perhaps, hobbits, leopards. Didn't find any. You'll also notice, everyone, that I've changed my headdress very subtly without you having to see my bald spot shining into the lens. On we go. Sandy, just sort of following on from the topic that we were talking about there with Chelsea, you want to know if we provide water for the animals during drought times. We do. Well, I mean, water is provided by default because there's a lot of pumped water here. There's a lot of pumped water in the Sabi Sands. So yes, during drought times, I suppose more water is provided. And you say, basically, I think your question is, will a drought not weed out weaker animals? Sorry, Becca, I can't hear you. You're crackling. Yes. So you want to weed out animals. And, yeah, a drought will certainly weed out weaker animals. It'll weed out animals that are diseased, that have a weaker immune system. Animals will become much more susceptible to disease, of course, during drought and hard nutritional times. And so those that are not genetically predisposed to being able to resist a whole lot of disease will, shake off this mortal coil, and and their genetic legacy will stop there. All right, we're going to move on a little bit quicker. Stef's got something interesting to show you back on Djuma.
Showing you our version of a bush spa. And the noisy Egyptian geese in the background over there. Just it's a pair of them that are busy performing while we have decided to come into this little pan that's in the middle of the bush over here. It's a secret little place. There's no roads close to this pan, and it's actually quite big for a muddy bush pan. I must be quite honest with you. It's actually it's nice to see. And then we walked out onto the mud here, and to be honest, it's quite treacherous. You can see that there's a buffalo that's been walking in here, and the buffalo is sunk actually hock deep. You've got these. This is where the buffalo was. That's where the hoof went in. That's the back hoof went into the mud there. There's the two dew claws over there, and it's still just off to our left-hand side. And that's where the buffalo lay.
Beefalo. Sorry about the loss of signal there with Stef. That bush backpack, well, it's actually been extremely reliable. But I don't know why it lost signal there. Here's a group of, well, it's a breeding herd of buffalo, really. Sounds a bit ridiculous saying that about this herd. Oh, listen. Shut up, bird. There's some kudu or some nyala alarm calling. A long way from here, though. I think they're probably north of the boundary. No, they're not. They're in this block here. Did you hear that? Oh! Let's turn on quickly and go and look. They're straight through here. Let's leave these I'd say ridiculous breeding herd because there are, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them. Males, females, and a very little calf. Let's go through here. I don't know if you could hear them, the kudu going, bah! Bah! You can still hear them. Let's just have another listen. They won't keep alarm calling in the same way that impala will. Yeah, there. So we need to move quite quickly. Hold on, everyone. Now, an alarm call, in case you're wondering, is the noise that an animal will make when it sees something that might want to eat it. In this case, a kudu or a nyala, but I think it's probably a kudu given the habitat. I'm going to drive to basically where I thought I heard it, which is pretty much around where that tree was. Right, we're going to switch off here. Come on, call again. Come.
Yep.
Straight out. Still quite a long way in front there. Good. Bryan's got them. Still quite a soft sound. All right, let's quickly go back to Stef. We'll try and follow up on whatever these kudu are shouting at.
Linky. Well, now we know the reason for this health spa being close by. It's because of this little grove of Tambuti trees that we're in at the moment. And I don't know if you can see, Wium can show you how much elephant dung is actually around here. And this is obviously a very shady spot, close to a mud wallow. And the elephants come and have a bath, or actually any animal, buffalo, as we were watching with those tracks before you lost us, buffalo, elephant, warthog, I'm sure any number of animal would come through, have a mud bath, and then come under this beautiful canopy, this deep shade of this tree, and come and give themselves a scratch here and spend the afternoon in relative comfort. You can see how over the years the elephants' bellies and sides have polished this Tambuti tree to a near shine. Have a look there. This is a place actually that I've visited from time to time. The first time I came through this place was with Scott when we were actually trialing the bushwalk. And we spent much time here, in actual fact, sitting on this very stump, just contemplating this glade. I find myself returning here from time to time. It's just such a peaceful place. There's just such a sense of calmness here. I mean, it's quite possible that that pan and this riverbed and this tree and its shade has been used for a century or more. This particular Tambuti tree has been damaged when it was very young, and it's coppiced. So this is one tree that has 4 stems, and the tree base itself is a very, very thick Tambuti. A Tambuti with a base that thick is generally in the region of 400 to 600 years old. You might find that this grove has been used for hundreds of years then. Obviously the tree needed to get big enough to produce this fine shade before it would have been an option, but maybe that's the sense of well-being that I'm getting here, is this grove that we're so privileged to be close to and can visit. We've got a request that has come through. Teresa in Virginia Beach has wanted to know if I can find her a baboon tail. Teresa, from where I am over here, that's going to be difficult. Baboon tail plants grow further up the slope, and we are very, very close to the bottom of the slope at the moment. But I'll keep my eye open, definitely, as we go back up the other side of this drainage line, and we'll see what we can find for you. But coming back to this grove, we're going to try and thread our way through it. It's made up of a couple of trees, as you can see. And these herds of elephant would come through here and spend their time here in the afternoons. As you can see, this elephant, probably a youngster, has done some damage. Amazing how strong it is. I mean, this Tambuti wood itself is one of the African hardwoods we have out here. It's got this most delightful smell. It's very similar to sandalwood or to cedar, the smell itself. And what you can do is you can actually take slivers of this wood and you can put it into your clothes, the clothes that you fold up and store for the winter that have insects in that come and eat them, fish moths and things like that. Slivers of this wood placed between the layers of clothes will actually deter those little fish moths from coming in. You can see where elephant has dug his tusk into this tree. Probably a youngster. The elephant has dug it into the tree and then levered up a piece of bark. Naughty boy or girl. Alright, let's carry on with this game path. Oh, here we go. We can even see where elephant have been. You can see where elephant have been lying down here. You can see here where the elephant have been standing. So what's been happening here is an elephant's been using his trunk to scoop up bits and pieces of sand. Here's the foot of the elephant is right here. This big dish-shaped foot with all these venation on the bottom is like a cracked heel. It's where the elephant was standing while he was busy giving himself a dust bath. And then this marking that we're seeing here is where his trunk would have been, and he would have scooped up some sand with his trunk, picked it up with his nose, and then thrown or dusted himself with that sand. And he looked like this elephant has stood here at least, and he's done it for quite some time. Right now, Deborah has asked me if you can use the wood of the Tambuti like you do for the cedar, and you use it in decorative furniture, jewelry boxes, etc. And absolutely. One of the reasons why this tree is quite rare in the bush or outside of protected areas like this is because it's been chopped down to be used in the furniture making industry without reserve for many, many years. In actual fact, Mozambique had the largest groves of Tambuti trees in the world, and for quite some time during the Civil War, war chests were furnished with money generated from the sale of Tambuti tree hardwood. As sad as that is, it is a reality, very expensive. Today, you can trade in Tambuti, you can buy it, but you have to do it under license, unfortunately. All right, let's carry on down here, Wium. It's getting quite thick here, so what I want to try and do is I think I'm going to try and wind my way through these trees and head down into the actual drainage line itself, which should be a little bit more open. Good morning, Peggy. I'm glad that you're concerned for our safety and that you do enjoy the bushwalks. To answer your question, yes, bushwalks are dangerous, and you have to definitely keep your wits about you and keep your senses open. But am I worried about wild dogs on a bushwalk? Not really, no. I've been lucky enough to encounter wild dogs on foot before and had them quite close to us. And we had no noticeable threat coming from the dogs to us. Something that I am concerned of in an area like this would be buffalo, definitely. Those those cranky male buffalo that we see all the time from the vehicles and try and avoid on foot if we can. And then elephant, of course. Elephant are notoriously skittish and quite nervous of people in thick bush like this. So when Wium and I are walking through the bush, we're taking a couple of steps, we're listening, we're taking some more steps, we're listening, and we're taking noises, cracking branches, we're taking oxpeckers, all those little noises into account when we're deciding on where we're going. But right now, not too much. We've been standing around this area now for a good 10 or 15 minutes, and I don't hear anything. Doesn't mean there's anything here, but I don't hear anything. I feel pretty confident that we could probably walk down into this drainage line, which is what I'd like to do. And another question about our safety, and this time from Brenda, and it's about snakes and how often we see snakes, and are all the snakes that we have here poisonous? Brenda, we don't see snakes very often. They're actually quite uncommon to see while we're on bushwalk. And that's because I'm not really looking at my feet. I'm busy scanning the bushes around us. And while we're walking, we're creating vibrations. And the snakes that would be in our path are feeling these vibrations and getting off of our pathway and going underneath bushes where they're quite camouflaged and difficult to see. And most snakes are not active at this time of the morning. Quite cold. Snakes are cold-blooded and they need to heat up. They need to generate metabolic heat from the environment before they get moving. It's not to say that you won't find nighttime snakes this time of the day, but daytime snakes, things like mambas, for instance, which would be a problem for us, they only get going a little bit later in the morning. And then to answer the second part of your question, the one concerning are all snakes poisonous, and absolutely not. By far the vast majority of snakes that we encounter out here or that occur here are not venomous, are not poisonous whatsoever, and don't have any threat to us. There are a few. There's a couple of cobra species that live out here. We've got a couple of adder species out here, and there are the mambas, of course, and then one or two other exceptions. The boom slang and the vine snake are exceptions to that as well. So less than 10, less than a dozen snakes out here are of medical importance or of significance to us out here. I do have a rule of thumb though, I don't pick up snakes if I don't know exactly what it is. And it's a good thing to do that. It's a good thing to cultivate there. And you avoid being bitten, which a few of my colleagues have been. Not taking care. James has an update on his chase. So I think it would be a good idea to go through to James and go and hear what he's been doing. He's been chasing around the bush after some alarm calls, and hopefully he's got something interesting for you. Right, and what I saw here was on this piece of grass, and you'll notice that there's an anomaly on this piece of grass. You can see there, it's this indistinct globule of brown stuff. Now, initially I thought it was just a piece of dung that had been dropped off or caught on the grass on the way past as it was being delivered from animal to ground. But then I realized that there is no dung around here. When I let the stem go, there is no dung here. And when I look around, there is no dung anywhere. And that means that what we are looking at here, and I'm about to confirm it with my nose, and please excuse this if it seems a bit off-putting, but this is just the way you have to do it. There's a slight musty odor, and that confirms it for me. That is the pasting of a hyena. So that is the anal paste of a spotted hyena. Wium's looking at me with horror in his face. The fact that I want to put my nose anywhere close to the anal paste of a hyena, but it's a glandular secretion. It's got nothing to do with their digestive tract, apart from the fact that it comes out the same aperture. And what the hyena would have done is walked down this game path, and it would have squatted over this grass stem, would have dragged it through its back legs. Let me see if I can do it for you. Dragged it through its back legs, similar to this. Exuded a pouch that comes out of its bum. Inside there would have been a glandular globule waiting to be released. And he would have gone down on his haunches and walked over the grass and carried on going. And what that does is it allows for other hyena in the area to know exactly what hyena was here and when that hyena was here. Obviously, hyenas are predominantly scavengers, as well as being pretty good hunters, but predominantly scavengers. And what this pasting allows to do is not only see, oh, but so-and-so from our clan was here, or so-and-so from another clan was here, but also how long ago that clan member was here, so that their scavenging efforts are much more, I've lost the words to be quite honest, but that they don't cover a small area, that they're a little bit more dispersed. There we go, so widely dispersed. And that pasting there it might as well be an essay that they leave here to say, I was here, this is when I was last here, there's nothing in this area, or there was something in this area. So, anal pasting of hyena, one of the very few that you find out here away from the dens. James seems to be ready to accept you right now. We've gotten over the gremlin in our final control. We're going to send you through to him.
We just came into this, we found the Kudu, everybody, and we found that they were still shouting, and they were shouting towards the middle of this block. We drove to where our tower is, which is in the middle of the block to the left of us, but I mean, we didn't find any tracks or anything. So whatever it was that caused the consternation in those Kudu, they were looking to the south and to the east, or west, sorry, and that's back towards 3 in a row pan here. So we've come back here to have a look. It's impossible to say what they were shouting at. Could have been cheetah, could have been leopard, could have been lion. But this is the kind of direction that they were looking when they were shouting. So we'll just come to the top here. If it is something like a leopard walking through the bush, or a lion or a cheetah, you know, the birds will kind of follow it. You'll hear these patterns of bird alarm calling. And it was sort of in this direction that they were looking. It'd be worth just having a stop here. There's an impala, same chap we saw earlier. He looks pretty relaxed. So let's just have a listen. See if we can pick up on some birds calling. Or maybe more kudu. Well, we found the kudu and they were staring. They were still alarm calling. No tracks of a predator. Went to that pole in the middle of this block. Didn't find anything on the way there or out. So whatever is causing the consternation in those kudu, I think is probably still in this block. And I don't want to sit here for too long. while it's moving, because it could cross out at any stage. It could also be heading back towards that pan where we were, towards those buffalo, especially if it's cheetah. If it's those two male cheetah, they often walk a sort of route down through into the clearings and down towards the Mala Mala boundary. But as is so often the case with these things, the expectation slightly outdoes the actual find. Because sometimes there isn't a find. Anyway, let's go and do this loop again. I mean, if we don't find anything, we're going to find ourselves back at 3 in a row pan, because it is a kind of focal point for quarantine. The cheetah have been seen there. The lions have been seen there very often. The other thing with cheetah, and this is an interesting one, is that they don't use roads. They don't use roads in the same way that leopards and lions will. So if it was a lion or a leopard that those kudu were alarm calling at, it's highly likely that you would have found at least a section of road, perhaps leading off onto a game path, where, you know, their tracks would have gone. Especially a soft road like this, you know, you can see it's very standy. But with the cheetah, because they're trying so desperately to avoid the other predators, they will often avoid a road completely. And, you know, they'll just step lightly across it and off they'll carry on into the bush. And I've noticed that with them. And so this is what's making me think that it is maybe those two male cheetah. Just keep an eye out here. Let's stop here and just have a listen. Katrina, a very good question, of course. Why don't we hear lion or impala, antelope, birds, alarm calling at hyenas in the same way that we do when they see leopards, for example? Katrina, the answer is simply because the hyenas are not nearly as fast as any of the other predators, and so a hyena is just not a huge threat on his own to an impala herd. It's much the same way as an impala herd doesn't alarm call at wild dogs. They alarm call at animals for a very specific reason, and that's to say to the animal that's stalking them, I see you, and I'm going to watch you. Because once something like a leopard or a lion knows that the impala have seen it, they'll give up on the hunt and go away. With a hyena or a wild dog, the hyena or a wild dog, their strategy is so just so brazen. You know, they'll run out into a clearing and just try and chase something down. So there's no point in them being alarmed at. And I think birds, you know, hyenas, I guess, will eat a bird, but they can't climb. So it's highly unlikely that they would ever be able to catch too many birds. And I think they're just not a real threat to birds, whereas a leopard is, little and large. I'm going back past this tree with its strange hose pipe. But if we can find no tracks crossing this road, then, I don't know, I'm going to be extremely confused. Could have been heading down this way towards the big clearings there, but I just feel like we would have seen some tracks. There's the road towards our tower, which we came out on. And that tower, of course, is what broadcasts the signal to you from Cheetah Plains all the way here. There's our hosepipe tree. Ellen, you say maybe that hose was put in the tree to stop elephants and that sort of thing getting at it. Yeah, I think it probably was. I just don't know what it's there for. You know, is it there to make a pan? Is it there to wet the road slightly? I don't know. Now, the buffalo we saw over there, that's where we were sitting. When we started chasing the kudu, we heard them alarm calling off to the left-hand side there. And they were looking sort of this direction and sort of towards the south of the block. So I don't know. This is deeply irksome. I see no tracks coming to and fro. Maybe it was something completely, kind of to the north of them, and we can't go much further north than this. I struggle to believe that we would have missed the tracks going across this road because it is very sandy. Let's just go and have one more look at that pan. Then I think we'll go into the clearings and come around, just in case we haven't missed the tracks. I just don't think that we would have. And then maybe whatever it is will be at 3 in a row pan. I'm going to drive relatively quickly, everyone. Just keep an eye out here. Not a track in sight. This really does make me think perhaps this is a leopard. No, not a leopard, a cheetah. Anyway. We might be lucky, we might be lucky. Alright, let's head back across to Stef while we look for the tracks. It'll give us another 10 minutes or so.
Alright, now you're back with us. While James continues his search for whatever is making those kudu so upset. From the sounds of things, he's hot on the trail over there. Just needs some time to unravel the puzzle. Now, myself and Wium have crossed through that drainage line opposite to where you were with us, where we were standing in that Tambuti grove and where we saw that fantastic ahina pasting on the stick. We are now walking along the drainage line here. A lot of buffalo tracks in the area. I'm getting this like nervous flutter in my belly, which is just one of those things you just got to learn how to trust. I'm quite vigilant at the moment. But anyway, while we are here and just listening to the bush in front of us, it gives us some time to literally just calm down, slow things down, and for us to listen to what's going on in front of us. No oxpeckers around. I don't know why it's giving. There's nothing that's really untoward. But in any case, we're going to carry on going. You're going to join us while we walk through here. We're going to see if we can find you. What's that? Is that another alarm call? We've got some noise around us here. No, no alarm calls. Looks like the bush is full of stuff happening here today. Nice area this. Once again, we're quite far away from any road at the moment. I'd say probably the closest road that we've got is around about 400 or 500 yards from where we are now. This is a white berry from a white berry bush, and quite tasty, I must be honest with you. Some bush tucker. We've been privileged enough to have late season rains here and a very dry start to the beginning of the year. And so what happened is some of these trees have only started to give fruit off now, which is nice. Usually you don't have a lot of fruit this time of the year, and now we have. And you might think that the bush is full of food to eat, but it isn't actually. You've really got to know where to find food and how to catch food to survive out here. It's much easier just to pack right and bring enough snacks and things. I carry around some snacks for Wium in my bag, which is a good thing because he's a hungry young lad. He's a growing young lad, I should say, that needs to get some food. But we are standing next to two things that do give food. One was this white berry bush, which you can have. The other one is this leadwood. Now, leadwood, as some of you might recall, is a combretum and therefore has a very hard wood. But unlike the other combretums, leadwood has a very gummy resin that sometimes exudes from it. You can create a sap run if you injure the plant. In other words, if you cut a small groove into its bark, you can create a sap run, but it just goes a bit slow. So it's always easiest to walk through a grove of leadwood like this and have a look for an injury from an elephant or from a buffalo that's rubbed. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is I'm looking in here to see if I can find some of this resin. The resin itself is very high in sugar. And sugar, as with fat, is highly prized by animals out here, and humans have learned how to exploit it. So this is like one of those, it's not as high in sugar as what, say, honey is, but definitely one of those things that you can walk through the bush, look for the sap of a leadwood, and then you can eat it. It gives you a bit of a sugar high. Not much. Honey is always better. And you'll find here where you do find a tree with a hive in, quite often in the Kruger National Park, especially in the baobabs, which occur a little bit further north of where we are. You find that cavities where bees have made nests quite often have peg holes from the bushmen or the sand people that used to live here many, many years ago, where they used to peg hardwood pegs into the bark and go up, and axe marks where they chopped open these beehives. And we're looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of years worth of cultivation of wild honey out here in that fashion. I want to see, this year has been fascinating for me to actually have a look and see what has been going on with this particular species of grass. This grass is a Eragrostis gummiflua, or the gum grass, and grows on seaplines, which I find fascinating. Have a look at this grasshopper that we've got here. It's again just stopping. He's moving around the stem of this grass as Wium is getting closer to the camera. So his eyesight is pretty good. Have a look at that. Isn't that wonderful? This bush camera is just something phenomenal. Now, I know that he's a nocturnal grasshopper and not a daytime grasshopper because of the presence of these massively elongated antennae. Let me show you quickly what I mean. Antennae on the front of this grasshopper. Have a look at how long they are. They literally are this long. 3 or 4 times the length of this grasshopper's body. There, this one ends. There. On my nail. And you can see as my nail touches it, he moves it away, or she moves it away. Because that's how this grasshopper senses the world around them. So this would be a nocturnal grasshopper and would use those antennae to figure out where they are, as opposed to a diurnal or daytime grasshopper that mainly just uses eyesight. But look at these long legs as well. It's a mature, massively developed jumper. I must be honest, I think this thing would be able to jump quite far. Nice to see, eh? Have you? I've never seen a grasshopper like this before. Obviously, being nocturnal, they would be difficult to spot. Just those antennae are just something incredible. Anyway, back to this grass. I think this grass is one of the most fantastic of all the grasses that we find out here for a couple of reasons. One is because it grows on probably one of the most hardcore pieces of land that we find out here, and that's because this piece of land that we're sitting on right now is completely saturated. This is where spring comes out. This is a seapline. It's a contact zone between the sandy crests and the clayey riverbeds. And once the crests get full of water, this on these seaplines is where that water pushes out down at the bottom of these, on the bottom of these slopes, basically. And this is where most of the water gets generated in the Sabi sand. Now, this grass has learned how to grow on it, and this particular grass, I think, is fantastic. Now, why I think it's so amazing is because this grass has realized that its seeds, which is here, are prized by insects, particularly ants. And what it's done is it's taken some measures to stop the seeds from being fed on by ants. And what it does is it exudes an incredibly sticky sap, which you can see at the joint there. There's a bee that's just buzzing around us. Now, in the sun, you can see that sap that is now being fed on by a fly. But this sap is very sticky. And what that does is it stops ants from walking past that particular node, walking up the stem of the grass, fetching the seed, walking down the stem of the grass again. Isn't that amazing? Oh, look at this fly. Now, I'm not a big fan of flies, to be quite honest with you, but this particular fly has landed here and is giving us a nice view of him. While I answer, now of course this fly now moves onto my hand because it's exactly where flies enjoy spending most of their time. This particular fly has been very common this year. You can see that it's got this green, almost metallic look on its back, a very robust fly. And we see them associated with buffalo. There he moves off, quite a slow flying fly. Luckily we haven't got clouds of them on our faces. So back now, this grass, most of the grass of this species that I found this year has not had enough water to exude this gum. This is the first grove or patch of this grass that I found that has exuded this gum. And this year, of course, the ants have come up and have taken all the seeds. And you can see on the top of this grass, all the ants have taken the seeds of this grass and have taken them down. So this tree, or this grass at least, hasn't been able to save its seeds because it hasn't been producing enough gum. Ergrostis gummy flua. Now to answer Siberia Zumi's question, Siberia Zumi wanted to know how many species of bee we get out here. Siberia, there's probably about in Africa 50,000 species of bee, 50,000, of which about 500 are poisonous or have the stings that we associate with bees as being quite painful. So a lot of bees. Not all of them are big. Most of them are these tiny little bees. We call them sweat bees, and they are associated with animals that exude salt. So we call them sweat bees or mopani bees, or yeah, they're basically bees. Mopani flies is another common name for them, and they are all over the place. Most of them don't make big hives. Some of them just have tiny hives in bunches of wood or in the ground. But I'll definitely see if we can look for some. I haven't had a mopani fly or mopani bee attack for some time now. Generally, deep summer, you can't go anywhere without these bees around your face and in your eyes, apart from as well as the flies. I did notice something else that I quite enjoy here in this grove as I sat down here. This is an Ocimum canum plant, or the wild basil, or licorice plant. Now, this plant was used, oh, it's got such an aniseedy smell. So when you crush this leaf and you smell it, it's very licoricey. Aniseed reminds me of Zambuca. It smells exactly like a blue or black Zambuca, if I were to describe it to you, and is actually quite unpleasant. The smell that I'm smelling comes from an oil that is generated by the plant, and that oil is a fly deterrent. And quite often, if you remember pictures in books, old cookery books, you'd find a group of herbs tied upside down and hanging above meat preparation areas. And in this area, this was the plant that they'd use for that. So in meat preparation areas, they'd hang a bunch of these plants above where meat is prepared or where you're slaughtering animals, and it would deter flies. And isn't that wonderful? It was also used in the local Shangaan culture to wrap the bodies of deceased individuals, because deceased individuals are only buried on the weekend here in the Shangaan culture. It's only buried on a Saturday. So if you die on a Monday, they've got to keep you nice and fresh until then. And one of the ways of doing that is by wrapping the body in this Ocimum canum plant. It then stops insects from moving on to the beloved one until they can bury them. So, on that macabre note, we're going to send you through to James for an update.
We found what the kudu were alarming at, everybody. There it is. It's a vicious, vicious beetle. Obviously, I'm talking absolute nonsense. We found nothing. I found no tracks, not a sign, nothing. I'm beginning to think that the kudu were playing a lark. But then Bryan found this as he was having a snack from his camelback. And I think it is a jewel beetle of sorts, everyone. Is he not? Very spectacular. in the morning light with his golden hairs and golden stripe.
Beautiful.
Stunning little fellow. We've come back to Three in a Row Pan for the third time, hoping that we might find something coming out of the block here, maybe Quarantine on his way for a drink. Let's just look into his eyes quickly, and that's why I'm standing here. That same impala was in the same place and running off into the bush and hasn't been alarm calling at all. Look at his eyes. How cool is that? I think that's absolutely amazing. Anyway, we'll take him with us on our search. We're going to do one more loop around this block, and then we're going to, we'll just head into somewhere else, because I don't know where else it could possibly be. No, you can't stay on my hand. You're going to have to sit over here. Go on, just sit there. You'll be fine. There we are. Rather a sweet fellow, that. We'll watch him as we go. Of course, it has been quite chilly this morning, and so the insects and things will be a bit slowed up. Looking around into the tops of the trees. Maybe Quarantine somewhere around here. Right, so we did exactly this route that we're on now earlier, so we're going to do it again just in case. Marianne, you want to know if I know of a female cheetah in this area? Marianne, I've heard of one. Brent, I think, had tracks of a female cheetah, but he didn't see her. So there's probably one. I'm sure there are one or two that will come through the area. Yeah. Now, like I said before, deja vu, looked like the Kudu were looking off in this sort of direction, but I mean, of course, they will look around. So it's not like it's easy to pick a direction exactly. I'm going to watch the road quite carefully, just to see if there isn't a track coming across. Will you please all look into the bushes on either side of us? And if we don't find anything on this loop round, we'll go back into the clearings and see what else we can see. One doesn't want to flog a dead horse for too long, that's one, Bryan. No. Whoops. One also doesn't want to have an automobile accident. No. Our friend the jewel beetle has almost made it to the right-hand side of the dashboard. We'll put him back there. No, don't lie on your back. There we go. Let him warm in the sun quietly. No, nothing here. It's a nice soft road, as I said, so there's lots of sand. So if something does cross it, I mean, we'd have to be almost blind not to see. What we will do is just drive up the road towards the tower again and see if something hasn't popped out there. Otherwise, we'll go back to the clearings, find an ostrich, a couple of lions, that sort of thing. In Siberia, we're talking about the clearings and the possibility of the black-backed jackal therein, and you say you'd like to hear the call of the black-backed jackal. It is a wonderful call. It's not commonly heard in this area. I mean, in many parts of the country, it's the most common sound of the night. And it's a kind of wailing. If you don't know what it is, it can be fairly eerie and terrifying. I'm not going to attempt to do it for you. Very high pitched. Bryan, would you like to do the jackal? Or you?
I'm not that well versed.
You're not that well versed in the jackal? Okay.
Sorry.
Did you get lots of them in the Kalahari when you were there? There we go. This is a road that leads to the tower from which we broadcast, and it's just a little sort of a thread, if you like, or vein into the middle of the block. Wendy, of course, has the suspension of a 16-ton truck, makes her about as comfortable to drive, not Wendy, Rusty, sorry. It makes her about as comfortable to drive as a stagecoach. And Chelsea, you're in Utah, obviously. We had a discussion about exotic species. And you want to know if we get bat-eared foxes here. No, we don't. Bat-eared foxes occur also up in the Kalahari, which are the sort of dry desert regions to the northwest of the country, and up into Namibia and Botswana, where it gets very dry indeed. And a bat-eared fox, for those of you who don't know, is well, unsurprisingly, a fox with ears like a bat. And what it does is it puts those ears on the ground, and it hears subterranean animals moving around, like gerbils or mice or something like that, and then it hears them sort of scurrying about underground and digs them up and eats them. It's the most remarkable strategy. I saw Bryan's very long arm coming out there to remove a branch, and I thought he was going to point at a leopard. Well, here's the tower, everybody. Fascinating, wasn't it? But I don't see any evidence of any predator whatsoever. Anyway, we're going to give up the search. I'm just going to turn off briefly. We'll have a listen. We'll give up the search around this block now, though, and see what else we can go and find now. Whatever it was could well have gone to ground in the middle of the block here. No more alarming, no birds letting us know that there's something here. Okay, on we go. Let's turn around. This is the kind of area that is, whoops, very similar, as I said. Very similar sort of woodland to the Juma environs in which Stef is moving. And Leopold, you want to know, when I go out and drive, what animal do I most want to see all the time? What would I like to see every time? I guess it would have to be one of the leopard or wild dog. Those would be the two that I would really like to see every time. Or elephants, leopard, wild dog, or elephants. I know I'm going to see impala most times. Lions tend to do so very little that unless they are actually on the hunt, they tend to be lying in a sort of pile of their own muck, which is it's tasteful. Cheetah, yes, I suppose. I would say wild dog, leopard, and elephant. Those are the three that I'd like to see every time. I feel that I wouldn't get bored of them. Oops. Out onto the road we go. The heat is starting to build a little bit now. I don't think it's going to be very hot today. It'll be very pleasant temperatures. Assuming that our vertebrae have not fused together, Bryan, thanks to Rusty's beautiful suspension. There's a very nice example of a ring-necked dove. Please don't move, dove. Please don't move. Ooh, just here. Sorry, in this combretum here. You got him there. Oh, you foul, foul bird. Let me just take my jacket off. Now, you will hear me complaining from time to time about about life generally. I tend to be a fairly cynical human being. But about the suspension on the Land Rover. And that is because, of course, the Land Rover was designed sometime prior to the original design of the wheel, I think. And for some reason, it has not been modified since its inception, which is astounding, considering the fact that every other car in the world is modified profoundly in the last 40 or 50 years. And this, of course, has been put down by enthusiasts of the Land Rover to the fact that the design was so good that it didn't require any modification. To those of us who are slightly less, who've actually driven Land Rovers for extended periods, oh, excuse me. To those of us who've driven these things for any length of time, of course, this lack of design modification is an indication of indolence on the part of the design team at Land Rover, far more than it is the success. And Mildred, you're interested in where the oil cap is. I'm not sure why you're interested in where the oil cap is, but there are oil caps on the wheels. You can see them there, and they sometimes get pinched by the hyena cubs. I think that's probably why you want to know that. All right, let's go back across to Stef and find out what he wants to show you.
Oh, welcome back to us after the mechanics lesson from James. I think he's battling a little bit. This morning we seem to be battling to find you some animals. But anyway, come this way. I've seen something interesting in the tree here. And what it is, it looks like a washing line, but it isn't really. It's just a very clever device of a spider. I'm going to put you into a position where you can see it. This is the drag line of a golden orb-web spider. Now, she isn't in attendance, but what is there, if I can show you, is a mercury drop spider. I'm just going to come around to the front over here. This is her web. It stretches from one tree to another. She's not here anymore. She's moved on from this life probably. But at the tip of my finger, well, let me see if I can get you a pointer stick. It's going to be difficult to get over here, but let me see. There's a spider there that's shining in the light. Just let me know if you got it. So that is a mercury drop spider, aptly named for the bright shiny bum that it has. It's dropped down to here actually, Wium. No. And they are what's called a kleptoparasite. Now what that means is it means that little spider is too lazy to build its own web. So it lives in the web of the golden orb-web spider. And any insect that falls in that's a little bit too small for the golden orb-web's notice gets snatched up by that little kleptoparasite. Very clever, in my opinion, a very energy-efficient way of living in the bush. Basically, this spider's not here. Look at these attachment points for a web. These webs are incredibly strong. This silk that the golden orb-web spider spins is some of the strongest substance on earth, many times stronger than stainless steel of the same diameter. And this is her attachment point. Now, they spin 7 different varieties of silk in any mixture possible. And that you're looking at right there is her anchor point for some of her strongest silk. That holds her web. And that gives it the strength. I mean, have a look at that. It's just unbelievably complex in a way that gives the tensile strength. I mean, have a look at that. Giving this web the tensile strength that it needs to withstand the impact of a large prey animal, get stuck in the web, and she'd then come down. Now, she herself, I wish I could show her to you, but she's probably about as big as my hand is, to be quite honest. She looks like she's been taken out here. Now, what actually caught my attention before we saw the mercury drop spider was this drag line here. And you'll notice that it's full of discarded insect remains, basically. Now, what the spider does is it once it's finished with its food, spins the carcasses into the web. And what that does is it gives a very clear indication to animals that are walking through the bush that there are webs here and they must please walk somewhere else. Very clever device from these spiders, don't you think? I saw it from quite far away and I took notice of it, and I'm sure a giraffe or a kudu would do exactly the same thing. Now, living in the same niche here, Wium's just pointed out.
Just show it to the finger. I can't see it on the viewfinder.
Okay. So Sherry, I'll answer your question in a second about any poisonous beetles and spiders out here. But have a look at this. In exactly the same niche, which was between these two trees, and with the same, obviously, predominant wind that we're getting, another orb web spider has made a web here in the absence of this golden orb web spider. Difficult to see though. Now Sherry, I'll come up with an answer there now. Yes, there are spiders and beetles that are poisonous out here. There are definitely ones that you have to take note of. Beetles not so much in this particular area. Spiders, yes. When you are walking around in the bush, and in particular when you're making camps in the bush, two spiders that you need to look out for out here are the sack spider and the violin spider. Both those spiders, the males of those spiders, not the females, the males of those spiders are nomadic, they're wandering spiders, they're aggressive, and they've both got a venom that can do us some damage. They're both cytotoxic venom, which means that they destroy cells and cell tissue, and if they bite you, they can cause some local necrosis, and in the case of a serious envenomation, even necrosis of soft tissue inside your body. Sorry, Sherry actually was wanting to know if I could eat any of these beetles. Excuse me, Sherry, I didn't quite catch the whole question. I choose not to eat beetles, to be quite honest. Beetle larvae, on the other hand, you can eat. So as long as it isn't brightly colored, you can eat almost any larvae out here, or any worm out here. You literally have to just squeeze out the insides, and I would prefer then to put them on a fire. Heat tends to denature protein-based toxin out here, and so I put them on a fire, crisp them up quite nicely, and then pop them in my mouth and eat them. And there's a great delicacy here, especially on fallen down marula trees. It's a big white grub. It's probably thicker and longer than my thumb, and it is eaten with great relish by the trackers out here. Another worm that we get out here is the mopani worm, and you're welcome to go and Google a mopani worm and go and see what it looks like. It is a bizarre worm. These worms are about this big. They're about that fat, and once again, you can eat them raw. You just squeeze out the insides, or you pop them on a fire or in a pan and you pop them in your mouth. They don't taste too bad. They taste a bit woody, but very good sources of protein, both of those. So no to beetles. I don't like eating beetles. I don't like eating brightly colored insects, but definitely anything of a common uniform brown or green nature you can absolutely eat out here. I don't know about where you stay, but definitely here. Now on that note, James has bumped into a huge herd of buffalo that I'm sure he's wanting with great energy to show you. We're going to send you across to him.
Buffalo everywhere, everyone. Well, not quite everywhere, but there's a very large herd in front of us there. They are in Mala Mala. They are the Mala Mala buffalo, and they're heading towards what is known as Clarendon Dam in the distance there. It is a particularly picturesque piece of earth-moving excavations, and there will be water in it for the buffalo. But behind us, or to the left of your screen, at a great distance, of course, very excitingly, some more buffalo. The same herd that we saw earlier. Remember that I described as a breeding herd, despite its rather sort of its paucity of numbers. They're obviously part of this bigger herd, and they perhaps got separated somehow. And here they come, followed closely by some fork-tailed drongos who are picking up the invertebrates that have been kicked up by the buffalo's hooves. I don't think this is the same group. The group that we saw earlier had a very little calf with it, and a few bulls. These are all cows, and also very attractively you can perhaps see the strings of saliva that they have dribbling from their mouths, making nice rainbows in the sun.
Someone's got a piece of grass inside.
Yeah, someone's got a piece of grass. One is definitely, no, there's lots of saliva. Lots of saliva dribbling out there. And apart from that being fairly disgusting to look at, I mean, it's part of how a buffalo lives. They use a tremendous amount of water, and that means that they're able to eat very dry food. So in the absence of water, they really do struggle. And certainly at the end of the drought, or during the time when we had no rain at all during the dry season, they were the animals, to me, that started to show the most obvious signs of lack. Now, Sandy from Canada, you say the top 3 meats where you are in the world are beef, chicken, and fish. What are the top 3 here? Maybe buffalo. No, buffalo is not really farmed commercially for meat. It's difficult to farm a buffalo. They show a disturbing propensity to homicide, which means, they're actually a little bit irascible. And so nobody really farms them but to raise disease-free buffalo, and often the calves are raised with cattle, with Jersey cows, as surrogate mothers. And so we don't eat a lot of buffalo. Beef, certainly, chicken and fish are eaten. Fish out here, of course, not in high abundance. You could eat tilapia, I suppose, and that would be the most sustainable fish to eat. But we've all started thinking quite carefully about the amount of meat we eat. On the arrival of Jean Drey, and he's fairly evangelical about his dislike of commercial meat farming, and I think that's made us all think quite carefully. So certainly less beef, chicken and fish is being consumed than it used to be. Well, for some. Very pleasant little breeze blowing across the plains here, and you can hear in the background the call of the lilac-breasted roller. Very pretty bird, very ugly call. I knew a girl like that once. Pretty girl, terrible singing voice. Alrighty, let's head down the edge of Mala Mala here and see if there's something else in the clearings. Goodbye, beefies. Have a good time at Mela Mela. It is remarkable, everybody. That picture is so stable. Well, of course, because of Bryan's skill, but the new software on it, that is amazing. See how it doesn't move? The car's jumping up and down like a jack-in-the-box on account of the appalling suspension that I described to you earlier, and the picture is dead still. It's fantastic. Just a year ago, when I started this, the cameramen were told that they weren't allowed to turn the cameras while we were driving because it made everybody seasick and they moved around. But this one, you can just pan off at the sunset and the sunrise. It's wonderful. We're going to explore those clearings there. Stef has got something else to show you.
All right, and I'm told that there's a few questions coming through on spiders, and so we found you one of my favorite web building spiders over here. This is a tropical tent web spider, and slightly different to the orb web spider. The orb web spiders obviously build webs that are circular in fashion and are arranged to catch flying insects between trees. The tent web spiders have got a very different web. These webs are arranged horizontally, and you can see the orb web. It's also a bit of an orb that's at that level, but it's surrounded by a bunch of entanglement snares. And what this particular web does is it allows for this spider to catch insects that fall. So insects that are going towards the branch. So insects that are flying towards the branch get stuck in these entanglement snares, for lack of a better word, and then fall down onto the horizontal web. The spider then comes up from the bottom, bites the insect, and then eats it and sucks it dry. So this particular web is for insects that jump from branch to branch and are landing here. It's not to catch flying insects, it's to catch bigger insects aiming to land on the branch. Now, I'm just going to ask Rebecca, if you don't mind, just to repeat that question. We got a question through while I was talking, and with me not doing as many bushwalks as I used to do, I battle to remember. So now I can answer you. Luke, sorry about that. Luke wants to know, how, when the spider's building the web, how does the spider get from one point to another? Now, Luke, some spiders walk, so some spiders will attach a thread of silk and walk from one place to another. So other spiders will let a piece of silk drop and float in the wind until it finds an attachment point, and then it'll slide across its own silk, anchor it, and come through. Obviously, most spiders don't build these elaborate webs. Most spiders just have a very ineffective way of making their webs, and that's basically just literally just going from point to point to point, making their web on the ground or making their web between the branches. But these particular spiders I find quite fascinating because they've got such elaborate webs. This is a spider that has no brain. Literally, it's just a bunch of cells that are collected together, either in a group or in a line, and yet they can make these massively complex silken structures made with different silk. Spiders have 7 different types of silk gland, different silks, and mix these silks in different ways to do different things and to catch different insects. I just find that, for me, that's the single most fascinating thing with these spiders, is the fact that they can be so varied and be so prey specific. I mean, we were chatting about a spider called a spitting spider yesterday, and this spitting spider actually catches jumping spiders by spitting envenomated silk at them. I mean, isn't that crazy? So James Henry's old hat has asked, how do spiders make the silk, or what's the source of the silk? It's a gland, and it actually produces silk. It's a water-based substance that comes out of a gland, is then aerated through a spinneret, and that spinneret and the contact of the air mixes the 2 different types of silk, or the 7 different types of silk in terms of the orb web spiders at least, and on contact with air it hardens into what you see over here. And as the spider combs the silk out of the spinneret, obviously it mixes more of this glandular secretion with air, and it hardens, and they then can pull it out of themselves at quite substantial lengths. I'm not actually quite sure how much silk a spider can produce, but I suppose it's the same as us. We will endlessly produce glandular secretions given enough good food and given enough water, I think, would be the 2 primary constituent parts of this particular thing. They can't run out, they don't have a reservoir, and it is a glandular secretion. When mixed with air, it gets quite warm, or that gets hard, at least anyway, like that. All right, let's carry on walking, see if we can find you some more interesting spiders. Anna Marie has asked for a baboon spider. Now, Anna Marie, I particularly really enjoy baboon spiders, and that's because I think they're so big and they're so scary. And yes, they are actually preyed on by quite a lot. You can imagine that even a spider as big as my hand, which is what those baboon spiders are, and with abdomens up to this size. I mean, we've all seen tarantulas in movies and in pet stores, I'm sure, and the baboon spiders out here are no different. They're also these massive, bulky, aggressive-looking spiders. But they are also eaten by things out here. And for that reason, most of the bigger ones, the females at least, build tunnels, and they live in tunnels their whole life, which can be up to 35 years. 35 years for a spider to live in a tunnel this long, that she digs with her mouth and then loses their ability. Once they reach an adulthood, a spider loses their ability to dig a tunnel. And then if she's uncovered, she's dug out, could be anything that digs her out really. Meerkat, mongoose, civet, a lot of insects eat spiders of that size, and if she manages to escape that, but her tunnel is damaged, she then becomes nomadic, and her chances of survival drop down drastically because of that. Well, we've got some oxpeckers that are busy shrilling away in front of us over here. Does mean that we've got something here. It doesn't sound like they're flying or sitting in a tree, which is good. So I think let's go and see what's happening to them. Or let's go see what they're sitting on. We are coming up to a series of pans, and I have no doubt that these pans have their usual resident population of buffalo, and so for that reason we're going to be a bit careful as we go through here. We should get into a bit more open. Simon, on the point of buffalo, wants to know what I would do if we were faced with an angry buffalo. Well, Simon, firstly, and possibly the best piece of advice, is to create distance. Any animal out here, especially the angrier ones, the ones that have the reputation for being quite cross, enjoy the respect that they do. And for that reason, as soon as you bump into one, or as soon as we have an encounter, we create distance. The next thing is create distance. If the encounter gets worse, for lack of a better word, what you do is you create distance uphill. So you stay in the open, you don't go and hide yourself, you create distance, and then you go uphill. Those are the three things. And if that fails, screaming, shouting, bashing, throwing sticks, and as a last resort, if all else fails from there, we will resort to a rifle. But like I said, those are in exceptional cases. I try not to get myself into those circumstances at all, in actual fact. So we do that by being quite careful. We're going to carry on going. It's not that we want to avoid showing you things. Quite the opposite, in actual fact. We love to show you things. And Penny wants to know, if I take my child on bushwalks. I absolutely do, Penny. It's one of my favorite pastimes to do. Just going to look around. There's a shine, an unnatural shine. It's just a leaf that's catching the right amount of sunlight. It's not the sun glinting off of a horn. So, Penny, I absolutely do take my little one on bushwalks. It's something that I enjoy doing. We spend a lot of weekends out in the bush, and my little one, who's 3.5 years old, has just learned the joys of walking in the bush. He loves coming with me on bushwalks. I don't do bushwalks with youngsters in dangerous game areas. So that's the proviso. I've just seen way too many predators react instinctively at young children. And by young, I mean younger than 12 to 15 years old. I will not walk with them in bush like this. Lion and leopard react instinctively. They go into hunt mode. I've seen, at least, with kids like that, and I've been way too scared at encounters in the past to want to recreate those things. So Blake and I will absolutely only be going into dangerous areas like this on foot, at least anyway, when he's much older than he is now. For now, it's just in areas where dangerous game animals don't occur or are quite rare. Of course, there are many ways of us getting through the bush. We definitely use two. I mean, you obviously know the benefits of having a car the way that we do. It allows us to get right up and close. And of course, with us being on foot, we can also be moving through the bush very quietly. We can get into areas where cars can't go. But another very popular way of going through the bush is on horseback. And Megan has just asked, is that possible, and do we do it here? And absolutely. Horseback was probably, let me say this, definitely the first way that settlers explored the bush out here. was on horseback. Very similar to many other places in the world. Horses are part of the landscape and part of what allowed travelers and settlers into these areas to explore these areas. An obvious question would be, do they get eaten by animals? And yes, they absolutely do. Except that horses are quite fleet. People are dangerous. Animals in those days used to avoid people almost at all costs. It's only been recently, with the advent of reserves like this, where animal and people don't have a negative reaction on one another. In areas where people and animals have a reaction with one another, i.e. over food resources or over space, animals are always more wary of people. And when people arrive, whether it be on horseback, on vehicle, on foot, animals I've seen have just taken flight. It's only really in places like this where we are not in competition for food, we are not in competition for space with these animals, that they start to trust us again, if I can put it to you that way. It's not really a trust, it's more just a fact that they don't associate us with mortal fear. Alright, let's carry on going. Those oxpeckers have stopped calling, which doesn't mean too much, but let's go forward here. And I see my armband has been a bit of a source of topic of conversation again from Marianne and a few others. Hello, Marianne. Yes, white is difficult to see against my shirt, to be quite honest, and that is only because my shirt has been washed so many times it's almost white itself. I definitely need to get a few more shirts. But generally what we try and do is use contrasting colors out here in the bush to make a point. So this white armband against a dark green shirt, you'll notice James likes to wear dark green shirts, would stand out very well. And that's actually what they're trying to do. Me, a white armband on a white shirt wasn't the cleverest idea, but I'm hoping that if we do find an anti-poaching patrol, or they make themselves known to us, that I can point at it, and that it'll be enough for them to use through their binoculars. That's what I'm hoping, at least, for anyway. All right, now there are other colors. Animals use Nail in Washington want to know, obviously on our anti-poaching chats, whether or not there's infringements, if there's like a board for game rangers to control them, or to, I suppose, just to monitor and exercise some form of control over an industry like this. No, to be quite honest with you, Neil, there's no such thing. We all belong or are registered to an organization called FUGASA, the Field Guides Association of South Africa, and through them we are registered with a government department as tour guides, the Department of Tourism, the National Department of Tourism, but there's no such thing as a sanction placed, or a rule, a general rule that's placed on us at all. The rules, and there are many of them, are usually imposed per game reserve where you are. So it'll be a rule imposed by the organization that employs a field guide, and those can be quite restrictive, or they just allow you to act within boundaries. Let me not use the word restrictive, it's a bit negative. So it allows us to operate within boundaries, i.e. in places like this where you are walking around with dangerous game, people want you to have an armband, especially if you're walking around with a weapon, so that they know the difference between a poacher and someone on trail with me. In other places, you have to have certain qualifications, certain minimum amounts of years, you have to carry a certain amount of kit, there needs to be certain amounts of people on a walk, etc., etc. So it can be quite restrictive, or it can be quite managed in areas, but there's no national sort of generally accepted rule. No, although all field guides in this country are registered at a national level, at a national department level. Hopefully that answered your question then, yeah? Right, now I'm fully expecting here to bump into a buffalo. There's these pans that we've got here, a series of pans. You'll notice that I've become a bit more vigilant, trying to scan my quarters. I quite enjoy making noise approaching pans like this. Yeah, we have got some mud here. Alright, for that reason I'm not going to be walking up to that pan. We definitely have got some mud, you can see it glinting there. Now mud at these pans means buffalo. And at this distance I don't want to be walking onto that buffalo. There's very little cover around that pan, so we're going to be walking around this pan, giving it a wide berth and out onto the other side, and perhaps with a little bit more distance we can see what's lying in it. While we do that, James is back on his vehicle with an update for you.
Well, buffalo are a very different prospect on foot, are they not? And we have come into the area where Nkanyeni was seen yesterday. I found her tracks. We think the adult goes across there into Mala Mala, but there were definitely tracks of little cubs as well. So I wonder if she hasn't stashed them somewhere around here. She may have come back. I don't know how fresh they were. Just listen to the radio. But I don't think there's anything of any import. Anyway, she may have stashed them in the thickets over there. We'll do one more loop up through that area and then go back past 3 in a row pan, see if whatever caused the consternation amongst the Kudu hasn't popped out, and if not, we'll hang our heads in shame and head for coffee and seeds. Won't we, Bryan?
Yes, we will.
Bryan doesn't drink coffee or eat seeds. You do eat some seeds.
I like seeds here.
Every so often. Not quite as much as I do. I think it's cook up today, Bryan.
I think it is.
I think there's a good fry up coming. Very autumnal wind blowing across the plains here. Not that warm. Now this is where we've seen our jackals before. Sandy, you say, please find the lions. Thanks. Even call them if necessary. No problem, Sandy. They'll be around the next tree. I haven't heard anything about lions today. I know that the 3 Sticks females were somewhere around Hofmann's yesterday, which is to the east of, at least to the west of Chitwa, which is 2 properties west of here. The Birminghams were in a similar position. Leopold, you want to know if I'm a dog or a cat person? I think I'm unquestionably a dog person. What about you, Bryan?
A dog person.
A dog person. Leopold, I'm a dog person. My mother is a cat person. And my brother is probably also a cat person. I am a dog person. I'm not sure what my sister is. She's a horse person, I suppose. No, Nkanyeni has given us the slip. I've no doubt we will spend some time with her over the next little while. But I was rather hoping today would be that first little while. Never mind. Oh, Stefan is on fire today. A golden orb web spider he has to show you.
Excuse me, flapping around my head like I have as you join us, but these flies are starting to get very active at the moment. But look what we found for you. As James quite rightly said, we finally managed to find you a large golden orb web spider, and she is an absolutely fantastic specimen. She's in great shape. not the largest golden orb web that I've seen of hers, but definitely one of the larger of the spiders. And she's probably been here for the whole season, judging from how healthy and robust she's looking. Very pretty, full, excuse me, swollen abdomen. Gee whiz, a fly flew down my throat there. Big swollen abdomen there, showing that she's had some good food. And in actual fact, you can actually see the remains of her food inside this web here. Mainly flies, it looks like. Remember that dragline that we were with a little bit earlier? That's absolutely one of them. You can see how she's spun all the discarded carcasses of her prey into her web. As I mentioned, it's a visual cue that to stop animals from walking through her web and breaking it. This very intricate, very sophisticated system of silk over here. Funny enough, just to give an example on how many different kinds of silk you get here, the orb web spiders spin all 7 different kinds of silk. This silk here, not sticky, you can see that. This is just silk that she uses to anchor and is very strong. This silk is very sticky. Have a look here. Just touch it and it sticks to my fingers. So that's where she catches her prey. These outside webs are to slow big prey down. So prey would fly into this, slow down, get stuck in the web. She'd then descend and bite it, wrapping it up in silk, waiting for her venom to liquefy the insides and then eating it. Now that spider's probably about as big as half the size of my hand. Let me put my hand near her so that you can see. There you go. And she is not dangerous to us. She looks nice and big and scary. She's distasteful. Those are her bright colors, those contrasting bands of color that she's got on her. Says that she's distasteful, but she's not dangerous. She's not one of medicinal or medical importance to us whatsoever. But she really is a beautiful woman. I want to look in the rest of her web here and see if we can find a male. In these particular cases, the male of the species is probably about 100 times smaller than what she is. But there aren't any. There's just a bunch of mercury drop spiders. Some very healthy mercury drop spiders as well, but no male golden orb web spider in attendance. Now she'll be here until the first cold fronts come through from the Atlantic Ocean and boil over the southern continent here in South Africa. She'll be here until that, and then she'll disappear. And we will only see these spiders come out again in November, December time. All right, we're going to carry on. James wants to finish his story, and we'll see you in a bit.
I was just, I'm afraid, very tempted, everyone, to do another pass. So we turned right at the top of the clearings instead of left. Came back past here. And as the definition for madness is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, so I have come down here again and found that the result has been exactly the same. No leopard. Never mind. We'll try a 3 in a row pan once more. We have a little bit of time left. Right. Excuse me. Monkey Man, you know that we've seen ostrich here on Cheetah Plains. You know that we've seen cheetah, and you say that you know that cheetah are predators of ostrich. They're not really, you know, they don't, I guess a coalition of males might take down an ostrich, but they aren't for precisely the reason that your query is given. You are interested in whether or not ostrich are dangerous prey. They're absolutely dangerous. They kick viciously. They've got nasty claws on the front of their feet, and they kick forward, so they don't sort of kick backwards like you might expect, say, like a horse. They kick forward, and they rake forward with those claws, and so they will try and disembowel basically whatever's coming to get them. And so they can be very terrifying indeed. They're not, I mean, what am I? To cheetah, they would be dangerous. To lions, no, probably much less so. But lions are predators of ostrich, where cheetah generally are not. They're a bit large for cheetah. But I mean, a coalition of male cheetah might try and take an ostrich, monkey man. I think it would be highly unlikely that a female would try and take down a cheetah, on a decent ostrich on her own. Alright, we're going to leave the clearings now and head back into the woodland. A lot of people are astounded when they come out to Africa and out to this particular area of Africa that there isn't more in the way of sort of these savanna areas, and they're amazed that there's this woodland and that we call it woodland, and they expect it all to be savanna. But much of South Africa is this kind of broadleaf woodland that we're going into now. It's always been a very interesting, well, I mean, not always. Sorry, I'm just struggling to hear a question here from the wonderful Twitter handle, James Henry's Old Hat. Do I believe that the soil and plants evolved to provide the animals with immunity from the parasites and diseases? No, I don't, because that's not really how evolution works, James Henry's Old Hat. Evolution doesn't act on the level of an ecosystem. Well, it does to a certain extent, but what would have happened, much more likely, is that the animals evolved the ability to use the nutrients provided by the soils and grasses in an area in order to cope with the parasites that they were dealing with. So evolution won't act from the bottom up, if you like. Oh, sorry, from the top. In this case, it would be from the top down. It doesn't act such that it acts very selfishly. So it's not going to act from the level a grass is never going to decide to, or is never going to evolve in order to benefit an animal. That's just not how it would work, because it wouldn't benefit the grass, and therefore the process of evolution wouldn't make sense for that grass. But an animal will absolutely evolve to eat that grass and derive from it, to pull out of it the nutrients that it needs. Now, a very good example of this would be something like a buffalo in this area, which has evolved to derive nutrients from the most dry, almost inedible straw. And they've evolved this ability because they have to be able to suck out nutrients from the grasses that are around in the wintertime. The trade-off for that, they need a lot of water. So it wouldn't happen the other way around. But absolutely, I mean, just about everything out here will have evolved to cope with the suite of diseases that there are, and they will also evolve to cope with the predation of other animals. So not only other animals, but basically everything. So, sorry, I'm getting blinded in my eye by this VR rig. So, a plant, for example, will have evolved strategies not to be eaten. Remember, no plant wants to be eaten. If a plant is eaten, its chances of breeding are therefore reduced, and so it doesn't make evolutionary sense for it to want to be eaten. And so for it to want to produce nutrients for the animals out here wouldn't make any sense. It's completely the other way around. It's a very nice question. Thank you. Right, 3 in a row pan for one final pass. We're going to find Quarantine sitting in a tree, possibly with a young buffalo. What do you think, Bryan?
I think that's very fair.
Yes, with 2 cheetah underneath, scavenging off the kill.
Perfect.
The hyena having a drink at the other pan. and possibly the Birmingham boys walking up the road to sort out who's who exactly, with some wild dogs tripping along from the other side and an elephant bull separating them all. Gosh, it's going to be so exciting when we get there.
I can't wait.
Can't wait. Someone was asking for baboon's tails earlier from Stef. I don't know if he managed to show them to you. Rebecca asked me by mistake, but there are some on this termite mound. And I have never seen them on a termite mound before, but there they are. Baboon's tails on the termite mound. Those are not baboon's tails, are they, Brian? No, they are not. They are not even vaguely like baboon's tails. They're some form of succulent plant. I do apologize profusely. Those are not baboon's tails, but they are relatively interesting. I don't know what they are, though. Let's move on before I embarrass myself further. Let's head across to Stefan. Apparently he is sunbathing right now.
So James says I'm sun tanning, which is actually not too far from the truth. The sun is starting to bake my bald head over here. It's not too bad. But why are we actually sitting over here? Is something caught our eye. Have a look at this. Now I'm going to tell you what it is because it's quite difficult to see, but this is an elephant tusk, an ancient elephant tusk, or more precisely the tip of an elephant's tusk. This was the tip, and this is the tusk. This is where it broke off or sheared off. That's where the root was. You can see that depression. That's the top of the root canal, and would have been the most likely place to snap off. Now, in the Kruger National Park, elephant snapping off ivory is not that common. You do see a lot of elephants with snapped off ivory, but it's not that common. Botswana, almost every single elephant that you see there has got snapped off ivory, and it happens through fighting. It also happens through feeding. Elephants will pry open bark, they'll pry it open, and they'll quite often snap their tusk off while they're busy prying bark open or prying roots up with their tusks. They'll snap it open. But have a look at this flaking. I mean, to be honest with you, I've never picked up an elephant tusk before. This is the first time I've actually had time to see its structure. And you can see it's starting to peel away from the tip. Now that's obviously how elephants keep their tusks sharp, is that it peels away from the tip, and through constant use out in the bush, he keeps on polishing his tusk. Now obviously without this tusk being fed, of course, by blood vessels, etc., etc., and without that elephant constantly polishing this tip, it started to peel. But I wanted to see, while I was waiting for you to come through to me, was how deep the real ivory lies. So I took my knife out and I polished a piece of this ivory. And have a look at that. Not very far from the surface, you're starting to get that beautiful ivory luster, the thing that has been enthralling mankind for thousands upon thousands of years. Wars have been fought over this stuff, I'm sure. So that's some ivory. Right now, it's actually illegal for me to pick up this piece of ivory and keep it, so I'm not going to do that. I should actually take it with me and report it, but such a small piece of ivory is not that significant, and I'm actually going to leave it here. Only myself and Wium know where it is, and we're going to put it back in the bush, and we're going to carry on. James has got a lapwing to show you in the meantime while we hide this from your prying eyes and from the rest of from the rest of my colleagues.
You know, Karula is not the only one who's had little babies. There's a little blacksmith plover here at 3 in a row pan who has produced 2 tiny little chicks, and they are probably just a few days old. There is Mum, shouting at them, as Bryan says, telling them to get out of the pool. And they are refusing point blank to do that. And they are beautifully camouflaged. I can't even see them anymore. Can you see them?
I think so.
is amazing. Bryan spotted one. There we go. Just lying down next to a piece of dung, trying to look unobvious and succeeding. Ooh, look, a beautiful butterfly the other side there. I think probably a broad-veined grass white or something like that. Isn't that sweet? Obviously won't get nearly the same attention as young George and Charlotte. But anyway. We've come to 3 in a row pan. We found a blacksmith lapwing. 2 chicks. No cheetah, no elephant, no leopard, no wild dog. Very disappointing, Bryan. But on the bright side, of course, look what we have still with us, Bryan. Look who remains with us faithfully, our faithful friend, showing us his lovely golden colours. Yes, we've become quite close, haven't we? Yes, we have. Okay, everyone, let's head back towards Juma. Still have to find out what he is, so I think we'll take him home with us, even though he's the Cheetah Plains beetle. Quite a wind blowing now. Whatever those Kudu were shouting at in this block here has clearly gone to ground inside there. I didn't see any tracks coming out again, so we'll have to come and look at another time. Perhaps this afternoon. Perhaps we'll send Sam Wise down here. He certainly did an excellent job of finding all the animals yesterday evening. Don't go anywhere. I wish to discover what you are. I suppose if he wants to stay here, we should let him. Marjorie in Texas, of course, you ask a particularly salient question as we've just gone past 3 in a row trifecta water pans. And you want to know, you say, if by pumping water are we not in fact interfering in nature a little bit? We're interfering with nature profoundly, Marjorie, absolutely. That is absolutely correct. And I mean, you can't really put too fine a point on it, other than to say that we are definitely interfering with nature. It has everything to do with the fact that there are private landowners here who wish to have animals on their land all the time because they're running commercial operations. Now, I mean, that might sound like a bit of a negative assessment. It isn't. I mean, this land, unfortunately, wouldn't be able to pay for itself were it not for the hundreds of tourists that come through here on a yearly basis, thousands of them. And they are an extremely important part of conservation efforts in this area. Now, yes, you could absolutely go down the road of saying, well, I'm not going to interfere at all. I'm not going to put any water in the area, but it would mean that for 4 or 5 months of the year, there would be nothing here to look at. And look, if everybody did the same thing, then that would be fine. Because in Botswana, for example, in the dry season, there are many parts of the Okavango that are very quiet indeed. You see impala, and basically you then see lots of very pretty flowers and birds. And, you know, if you've come out on a holiday hoping to see the big five, that can be a little bit disappointing. But if everybody does the same thing and everybody's honest about what you can see when, then I suppose it would be possible. But that's just not how it works out here with humans. It doesn't work anywhere in the world with humans. And so, yeah, water certainly is an interference in nature. But at the same time, we know that the rivers don't flow like they used to through these areas. We know that farming and agriculture and human settlement outside the borders of the park, mining especially, have sucked many of the rivers dry. So the provision of artificial water is not necessarily providing more water than there was in the past. It is definitely changing the distribution of it, though. So it would never have been distributed in the same way that it is now, so evenly spaced, where, I mean, you literally can't go 2.5 kilometers in the Sabi Sands without finding water. You're never more than 2.5 kilometers from water. Very nice question, that. And I mean, I sometimes feel like a bit of a heel when I say we know if we find an injured animal, we're not going to interfere because we want to let nature take its course. But I mean, sometimes this is around a dam, which is very obviously humanly built, and Marjorie's just picking up on that seeming contradiction. And I guess, I mean, it could be argued that it is a contradiction, but at the same time, we want to have as little effect as possible. Good question. Nice debates that we can have around these issues. He's gone, you know, Bryan. No, he isn't. He's still here. He's with us. We're going to head back towards Djuma, and we'll do one pass over the Umlolwati and see if we don't spot Karula. Sorry, Cheryl, I missed that question entirely. Oh, you want to know about this Facebook chat thing that Graham and I have been trying? You want to know there's a specific time? Well, we'll probably start doing it 10 minutes after every drive. So we'll stop in the workshop, fire up the Facebook chat, and if you want to interact with us after the drive, you can. It'll be with, whoever happens to be in the workshop, I guess. So whoever's on camera, we'll shoot the cast. When the internet signal is strong enough, we'll be able to take you around into camp and do it there as well. For dinner, you can chat perhaps to some of the behind-the-scenes staff, like Rebecca, who's in my ear right now. Rebecca, we're probably going to lose signal here, so you might want to go across to Stef. And don't forget the time changes. You can see those on the blog. And I'll go through them just now as well. Let's go back to Stef.
Now that is quite obviously a praying mantis in profile, but let me tell you that those boulders that you're seeing underneath that praying mantis's feet are actually grains of sand. Can you believe it? That is the most tiny of praying mantis, and we disturbed it, and I just saw this thing running across the ground. It literally looks like a piece of dried grass or a stick, and that's obviously exactly the hunting or the concealment method that this particular praying mantis species uses. Isn't that amazing? Have a look. Let me see if I can put my finger down there for some reference. Ah, there he runs away. For some reference to size. Oh, he's now quite a speedy fellow, if I do say so myself. Where's he gone? He's run away. Well, anyway, what I actually wanted to show you and why we found that praying mantis was this. It is quite obviously a giant land snail shell. Now, land snails are preyed upon by firefly larvae who live on them. And this is probably either, well, it's most definitely as the case of a firefly larvae being laid on this particular snail, which then ate the snail and killed it, and then left its shell to be bleached by sun and by rain. But why I picked this up is from a survival point of view. We were talking a little bit earlier about what insects you can eat for food and what gum we were talking about. We had eaten a whiteberry bush and we were looking for the sap of a leadwood. But this, one of the most important things to find in the bush if you were looking to survive here, because this is how you're going to boil and purify water. You put water in here, you put it on your fire and you wait for it to boil, and you let it boil for a few minutes, and then you can drink almost any water. You can take water out of these disgusting pans that you see that elephants and buffalo just urinate and defecate in all day, and you can boil it in a little cup like this, a makeshift cup, and you can fill your water bottle, keep boiling and fill your water bottle until you've got a full water bottle of boiled water, and you'll be able to drink that as purified water, which of course is the most important thing. You can go without food for months. You can only go without food for 3 days, without water for 3 days here. And believe me, after a day of no water out here, you can't even move. So one of those important things. So giant land snail shell in terms of survival techniques, all good. And that let us find that brilliant little praying mantis. And you can see where that praying mantis was hunting. That praying mantis was hunting in this fallen down leadwood and hunting amongst the grass stalks, looking exactly like a grass stalk itself. And I must say, it constantly amazes me, the fact that we are big like we are and we only have to worry about lions and elephants and leopard. Imagine if you were an insect trying to hide away from something that looks like this tree with arms and teeth. All right. Katrina's asked a good question. What is the difference between a grasshopper and a cricket? Katrina, the general rule of thumb is that grasshoppers are diurnal, daytime living, and crickets are nocturnal, or nighttime living. They have also got some slight dietary differences, but the main differences between the two, and they are distinctly different, is a grasshopper is daytime and a cricket is nighttime. That cricket that we saw a little bit earlier, the one with the long antennae and the green one that Wium was showing you on the grass stem, that is a cricket, not a grasshopper. All right, it's a massive raisin bush that we're having a look at here. It's the sandpaper raisin. Now, growing amongst it is a buffalo thorn, but the sandpaper raisin itself is this tree here, the scraggly tree. And I know it's a sandpaper raisin because of its very angled bark. You can see it's got this very angular bark, and that then will allow me to pick a leaf. And I'm going to show you, try and get it in the sun, why it's called the sandpaper raisin. You'll see in profile there, I don't know if you can get it, Wium, are these very stiff little hairs. You get it?
Yes, sir.
So we've got those very stiff little hairs. Those are like little teeth. They are very hard and makes this leaf feel like a piece of sandpaper. And I've used these leaves in the past on my rifle stock. Let me just show you where I've bumped my rifle stock. There. That is where I fell off of a rock in the Lubombo Mountains on the eastern side of the Kruger National Park. Almost fell off a cliff. And I've taken very soft leaf, and you work out the burrs in the wood. As you can see, it's even rubbed off the oil. And what that does is it just returns a nice polish to the wood on the stock. And then you can put your wood polish over that without any burrs on it. So without the rifle stock splintering, which is of course not what you want. That's what I used over there. Sandpaper raisin. Nice use for a plant like that, hey? Hi, Ellen. Sorry, just to get through all these sticks with you, and then I'll answer your question very quickly. You've noticed trees with shiny bark, and let's quickly walk over to this so I can show you, because yes, there are a few trees with shiny bark, and yes, to answer your question, trees with shiny bark are more difficult to climb than trees without shiny bark. And you can see here, and that's because leopard don't only climb by using their claws, they also climb by the friction generated on their pads. So a tree with a very powdery bark or with very smooth bark, this isn't the smoothest bark that you get, this I think a leopard would climb quite easy, but you get my point, would be more difficult to climb, mainly because, as you can see, even if I'm pushing a lot, my finger is still able to slide, whereas if I went down to a rougher part of the tree and I push with the same amount of force, it's much more difficult for my finger to slide. And that's what I mean by friction. So leopard would claw and then use their pad for friction to get up trees. And the smoother or the more powdery the bark, the more difficult it would be for the leopard to climb that tree. Now, we've reached that time of the day where myself and Wium have to say thank you very, very much for joining us on the Bushwalk today. It's the end of the Bushwalk. We'll be seeing you again sometime soon. I don't think I'm going to be doing a bushwalk for the rest of the weekend. We'll definitely see you next week again. Thank you very much for helping me through today. And at least on behalf of myself and Wium, thank you to the two ladies in final control. And we will see you next time.
Hello everybody, we are just coming down towards the Mulwati drainage We'll have one more super zoom up the side and see if we can't see Kurula and her babies. I'm not holding out much hope. The universe hath spit on me this morning as far as sightings go. Has it not, Bryan? Yes. You think I did something wrong?
Potentially.
Potentially, maybe.
Potentially, maybe.
Just in case you are wondering, I know that we're going to probably bang on about this for the next 3 or 4 days. Time changes for the afternoon drive. It will be going out 1/2 hour earlier than it has been. So that will be 3 o'clock our time, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the States, and 6 o'clock Western Standard Time. I cannot hear a bleeding thing Rebecca's saying to me. There we go. Alrighty. So we're just going to go down into the drainage here. Oh, there's a tractor. That's a very nice thing to see. I do copy you, Rebecca. There's some excitement, isn't it? A tractor dragging a whole lot of tires. And an illegal car with no license plate on it. Just going to get out of the way here. This man in his tractor is doing a very valuable job of smoothing the roads, and it is here that Karula was, and we're just going to stick our noses down and have a look here. See anything there, Bryan? It might be about to be rear-ended. No, the leopard is still in the deep shade there somewhere. Alrighty, let's head back up towards breakfast. Seeds and coffee. People see a camera like this, of course, and they basically think they're looking at a celebrity. And Megan, you're in Ottawa, and you want to know if we can go and find Beyonce today. We'll try and find Beyonce, yes. Beyonce, to those of you who don't know, is a warthog. Not the real Beyonce. The real Beyonce is substantially prettier than a warthog. But we found a very voluptuous warthog the other day, and we thought, well, I say we. I christened her Beyonce. All right, everybody, it's a perfect autumn day, and we're going to go and enjoy it, probably with a relaxing breakfast, and then I'm not sure. Bryan, what are you going to do?
Probably some footage.
Sort some footage, quick snooze, maybe. Perfect weather, sitting under a tree and reading a book. I might do some of that. Thank you very much, Bryan, for your efforts. There is Bryan's son, Thumb. And a big thanks, of course, to Stef on foot. It's so lovely having him on foot again these days. Wium was filming him. Diminutive Wium with an enormous camera. And a big thanks, of course, to the final control of Rebecca, ably assisted by Luis. Thank you to all of you for your comments and questions. We'll see you later this afternoon at 3:30. There are some elephants. Bye-bye.